Hey, everyone, our first budget meeting for the year. Obviously, it's a busy year. One go out last year, so we'll expecting that one better, nothing more than improvement this year, so. Well, I keep it up, it's on it.
Thank you. In case anyone has a device, if they want to read some of the stuff on the website, or our guest passwords up here, it's also on the wall. We'll start off with introductions. So I think everyone knows me. I'm Mark Wall, Town Manager. We'll start with this Town Manager. Go on around.
Jeff Emerson, the Assistant Town Manager.
Kathy Ritter, Finance Director.
Ryan Holmes, the Select Board Member.
Marie Brilliant, Select Board. Ann Callahan, Select Board Member.
Roll call, select board member.
Ian Wheaton, Chair of the Finance Committee.
I'm Mike Labby, Vice Chair, Finance Committee.
Jeff Cannon, Finance Committee.
Bill Thompson, Finance Committee. Bob Dodge, Finance Committee.
Ruth Lyons, Finance Committee. Mendel Bondinito, Finance Committee.
And we also have a couple of our department heads.
Hey, Karen.
We do want general assistance and help.
And our planning director is upstairs with a secret meeting where she'll be down and join us as well. Your schedule for presentations is on the second page of the book. We're going to modify it slightly tonight because Ed couldn't make tomorrow night, so we're going to shift him to tonight, and then we're going to shift a couple of the items that are at the end tomorrow night. And then Justin, our assessor, was out all last week. He started to come back to work today, but he's still having to do not 12-hour days. So I'll cover his part with him tonight, and if you have questions I can't answer, we'll get his answers and bring them back to you tomorrow. So now we'll jump into it, talk about the things that we'll focus on for this year's budget. The only new position we've asked to add in the town is permanently fund the community paramedic program. The past couple of years that's been funded with a grant. You'll hear more when the fire chief presents tomorrow night, but it's been wildly successful and a model program for the state. And so we'd like to make that permanent. The other big thing we're focusing on this year is wage adjustments. I'll give you some more details with some other slides, but all three of our union contracts are up June 30th. We've been, I think we've had 5 or 6 meetings already with the police union. And then I think we're getting close to a resolution on that one. And then we're going to start with our other 2 unions after that. So we're going to talk about how coal is really having kept up with inflation. Then we've also found that we've got some positions in town that are below market, which are making it hard to fill the positions. We also have some people in town that are really at the top of their game that could easily get considerably more someplace else. And while none of them have said to me, how the gut my hand, all of them, I realize how valuable they are to us, and I want to make sure that we're paying them at least close to what the market is. You may recall a few years ago that we were very generous to Lisbon when they didn't have a code enforcement officer, and they asked if they could borrow ours to help them out with some things. We did that, and then the town manager tried to hire them away and offered them $8,000 more than we were paying them. But that's the kind of thing that we're facing. We ended up in the end, we were able to, out of a wage adjustment line and with the union's agreement and the select board agreement, we were able to bring him up, not quite to what Lisbon was going to pay him, but enough that he didn't want to leave here. He was happy here and kept him involved. Then we'll talk about, this will be more the last night, but some of the infrastructure improvement that we want to fund with the capital budget. One thing we ran into the past year is you may recall that we basically had 3 projects that we were trying to deal with for capital projects. One was Pleasant Point Road. There's 2 problems with that road. One is that it floods at the corner as you go down when we have particularly high water events. The other is that there's places on the road where the current is a risk of undermining it, to the point where it actually was brought under the pavement. On a section we did some emergency repairs for last September. We've got another section that we've authorized the contractor to start collecting the rock. That once it warms up, we've got another section that is just about to the pavement that we need to shore up. The good news on that one is that we use Martin Construction that frequently that helps us out with our public works. And they were extremely cost effective. For the work that they did last fall, they did 100 feet of stabilizing it with rock and a special landscape fabric and things. cost us less than $20,000 for what we did. So we're expecting probably that same ballpark. We've had Sebago Technics go through to evaluate what needs to be done with the road. We've had a couple public meetings. They've got their final conceptual plan that will be just scheduled a meeting today. It's going to be presented the 26th in this room. They looked at basically three different things. One is there's areas of the road that aren't at this point so bad that they have to have rock to protect them. And the state really likes you to use, they call it a nature-based solution, and it's planting certain grasses and things where the roots will help keep it from eroding. So the thought is that the nature-based solutions will help save us from getting to the point of emergency situations later. So that's one thing they looked at for some areas of the road. Other areas of the road, they think that it's more important or needs rock to protect it. And then the corner, they talked about building up the road. What was interesting and maybe good news for our budget, because the cost estimate for the building up of the road to above flood level and installing a bigger culvert there is between $1 to $2 million. But the general consensus we had from the neighbors at the last meeting, and if you were to watch the video, actually had to raise their hands at one point. And most of the people there on Pleasant Point Road said they can deal with few hours, 6 hours, a few times a year of flooding, and they would almost prefer that to what it would take to raise the road, which would have to widen it, get more easement rights. So we'll know more about that next week, but unless people change their attitude significantly, we may not need to rebuild the road in the corner. One thing we are going to do though is this year in the capital budget, we had some money to replace parts of the doors at the fire department. Some of the springs, it was going to proactively do like every door, but we've only had a couple actually fail. So the thought is, rather than just replace them all, let's just do them as we need to. But the fire department boat will not function right now. It needs to be replaced. So we're going to kind of, we're in the process of getting prices for the boats. And the thought is we'll redirect that money once we get the quotes in and get the select board approves. And spend the money to make sure we've got a good functioning boat. So if we get high water down there, then we've got the boat as opposed to paying $2 million to rebuild the corner. So that was one project that was listed in the capital that, at least for the work we've done, it's significantly less than estimated. The next project that was in there was about $200,000 to do the pedestrian and the guardrail improvements at Forsyth Field to make it safer to cross there. So it's not a free-for-all with parking coming out. That project, Dennis thinks he may be able to do more of it in-house with Public Works to knock the cost of it down some. But we intentionally not started that project yet because the bad news is the project for the Tedford Road culvert, they found the soil was too organic, so that they don't have a good foundation to put the dirt on and the rock to replace the culvert. So that the cost estimates for that went up to 1.2 million. So our 950,000 we had for these three projects, we got a bit. Wright Pierce went back to the drawing board and came up with some ways they thought could save a little bit of money. And then we put it out to bid at the beginning of January. The bids were open last Thursday, and they're going to come up with a select board on the 20th. The good news is they came in a little less than expected. So Pratt Construction was a little bidder. They're the ones that did the work on Elm Street culvert a couple years ago, and they did a beautiful job on that. They had bid $894,000 for the project. But the water district wants to put a water line across the same area where we want to put the culvert, so they're going to cost share. And when you have a project like that where people cost share, the engineer goes through and figures out what part of the project was only needed by the water district, what part was needed by both. And the engineer thinks the fair price for the water district to pay is $54,000. So that'll bring the cost for us from the $894 down to $840. And the water district has said they're okay with that number of things. And then we have some of our TIFs have money that didn't get spent. We can't put that TIF money into our general budget because it's tax sheltered. We can only use it for things that were legitimate purposes of that TIF. One of our TIFs has $114,000 in it that came from Highland Green. And one of the legitimate purposes of that TIF money is for road and pedestrian improvements on Tedford Road. One of the things we're doing as part of this culvert project is to put a sidewalk on it, so that, because we're looking at doing sidewalks eventually on all of Tedford Road, we've got all of their building and the extension of this piece now. So this project is certainly both pedestrian improvements as well as Tedford Road improvements. And so we'd be able to use that $114,000 towards it, so that helps us there. So assuming that project comes in on budget, which sometimes we find overruns, they recommend 10% extra for the overruns. But if we don't have overruns, we should be able, and we use the money from the TIF, we should get the cost for ours part down from the 894 to about 750 or so. So, but that's what we're running into with a lot of these capital projects, is unfortunately things aren't what you hoped they would be. So we're trying to find creative ways to fund them and get the most for our dollar and thing. So more about capital stuff on Wednesday night, but that's what we had this year's capital budget. So as far as when we developed the budget, what things we considered most important? Well, first was things that were legally required to do. So the CEA is a credit enhancement agreement. So it's the TIFs, depending on the TIF, most of them are 50-50. We have to give a certain percentage of the tax revenues back to the developer. That's what that CEA is paying back to the developer once we have to for whatever TIF. Our debt service, we don't have much of that. So, but we do have to pay whatever it is. And then our union contracts and things. Next in priorities was public safety. Then we did public works, then vehicles, infrastructure improvement, and then general government. And then obviously accomplishing all of them by trying to spend as frugally as possible. It's responsibility. I won't say where I used to work years ago, when I remember that one of my superior used to say, hey, it's May and we got to spend this money, so make sure I get it next year. And then I remember I had a neighbor who was in the Navy, one of the pilots, and he would do a lot of flying at the end of the quarter. And he said they'd have to use up their gas, otherwise they were at risk of not getting the allotment for the next quarter in their military budget. I can tell you Topsham does not operate that way. Probably, if you remember the old New England saying, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. I think Ed Karen came up with that. So Ed stretches everything as far as he can, and maybe he's our biggest stretcher, but everyone else does that too. So, which is probably why at the end of the year, we frequently have money left that can get rolled over towards surplus to fund for the next year, is because people only spend what they need to. People aren't spending money just because it's there, or because they fear they won't get their budgets approved the next year if they don't spend it this year. So a little more in detail of the things we're trying to accomplish with this year's budget. We want to complete this Tedford Road culvert project. I think we're going to have enough money left over from, using the current year's money and then that TIF. But if need be, we might have to have some money for it next year if we had cost overrun or something. Complete the Foreside Road parking improvements that we plan to do. Continue to work on Pleasant Point Road. But at this point, it's more finish the emergency work, which will be done this year. And then we envision using other money if we can find grants and things. There's a grant that is due date in April, or at least did. A lot of grants are disappearing, so it may not be there, but if it is, it would be something that would do some of this nature-based solution. So we might just need some money to go matching funds with it, as opposed to having to pay the whole cost for ourselves. But I think the thought is that we'll not necessarily jump out to do a lot there other than the emergency work until we can find ways to leverage our money. Tedford Road improvements, besides the culvert, we want to get the sidewalks in the road. Unfortunately, the sidewalks in the road also necessitates basically rebuilding the road because the drainage there is not good. And you need to, if you just put sidewalks without the drainage, you'd be pooling water all over the place. So the road, Ray Pierce has estimated all total would be between 1 to 2 million to get the drainage straightened out the sidewalks. But they haven't done the final plans yet, and hopefully we can find some ways to save money on that too. One way we might be able to save money is they estimate just to cross the railroad tracks. Right now, the state has told Dennis that they want us to rebuild a state-of-the-art railroad crossing, which would be $100,000. Which is interesting because the train hasn't passed there in 50 years. So there is a bill in the legislature right now, LD 29, to convert that track area to what they call trail until rail, which means it could be turned into a trail. If that happens, if it passes the legislature, I can't imagine that we don't have a connection to someone on Elm Street that could talk to the Department of Transportation and say, hey, let them rebuild the road without putting in the railroad crossing. Why don't you put a crossing in the track instead of paying the so there's some things we actually save money, but we need some time on that. Then recode continues. I guess some may say, why is this taking so long? But I think it's for good reasons. It's because there's now been, we were hoping it would be 2 drafts, but even after the second draft, there's been a lot of community input where people saying that like this changed or that. So it's going to need a 3rd draft. So that process goes on, but we definitely don't want a code that people aren't happy with. And there's a lot of people with varying viewpoints that are weighing in. So I'm hopeful that in the end, we're going to have something that gets broad support, which is certainly what you want with your zoning code. Workforce housing continues to be an issue. We've had a number of developers that are considering putting apartment buildings pretty much in the this area of town. And some of them either explicitly or quietly say they would like to have a tax increment financing district for their housing. And I asked them if it's going to be workforce housing or affordable housing or meet the requirements of the Maine affordable housing TIF. And the answer so far has been no. And so then my answer has been, you're certainly welcome to come to the select board, but I don't see it getting far because the answer that you're going to get back is, well, how come my market rate house doesn't have a TIF? Why am I paying, why don't I get my rebate back on my property taxes? So when I say workforce housing, we're looking for things like Topsham Housing Authority came to us. The town's been very supportive of them. It's been at 2 different town meetings because the town gave them a TIF to help fund that project. And then it turned out it needed a little more amending the TIF to make things work. But the good news is it's going to be opening in March. And it's low with, I guess, like 38 units, 2 or 3 bedrooms. So the people that are working for Crookers and Market Basket and our employers in town will have a chance to be able to live in Topsham. So when we can find opportunities like that, we want to do what we can support them. So I don't necessarily mean that we're supporting them with, I'm not saying the town is going to go out and build its own project. What I am saying is that Sky's department is extremely supportive, and Jeff and I will meet with them, and whatever we can do to try to help get more housing for our workforce, we'd love to do it. There's been a lot of requests for increased bike and pedestrian opportunities, so we keep that in mind as we're doing other road projects. For instance, I gave the example of Tetra Road, where we've now adding a sidewalk to that when we build the culvert. That was takes actually widening the road in that area. We talked to the gentleman that owns the kind of the swamp area that's behind where the culvert is, and he was more than happy to give us an easement to be able to build it out another 6 feet so that we can incorporate that in our road. Not necessarily in the next couple of years, but there's a culvert on Forside Road near the church, used to be the Never Meeting Sportsman's Club area. When that one has to get replaced, I see the same thing happening there. We're going to make sure we make it wide enough so we've got better bike passage on Forside Road. That's another area where there's more and more biking and people want to recreate. And then we're also still working with the community center committee as they do an analysis of whether or not the community center makes sense for the town and things. So that continues to get supported. And then we're trying to position the town to take advantage of opportunities. For instance, the Merry Meeting Trail that I just referred to a few minutes ago. So we've been involved in discussions on that. And to the extent that we think we can get Topsham to get a benefit or save money or anything else, we certainly will work on that. We look for opportunities for hazard mitigation money. And then one thing I'm really excited about, and I think it's gonna help us in the future, is extended producer responsibility. You might ask what that is, and you'll probably hear more about it from Ed in a little while. But a few years ago, a law was passed in Maine, that said that people that generate, refuse need to help pay for it. So for instance, you may have noticed some of your Amazon packages or Halloween packages that used to come in big boxes with lots of packing. Now maybe they're just a brown paper bag or something. It's because they don't wanna have to pay more than necessary to help us recycle. Fiscal year 26, or sorry, calendar year 26, so next January, the state's rules are now out, and they're gonna be looking for the towns to keep track of their costs of recycling certain materials. The list of certain materials is supposed to come out in around April, but it's what they call readily recyclable materials. And they're working on developing markets for those things. Like right now, there isn't much of a market for glass, but there is. But they're trying to find a market for that. Things like cardboard is definitely a market for, aluminum. And so they're looking for ways to increase the markets, and to the extent that it's costing the towns, if we're subsidizing recycling, and we certainly do, then they're gonna help offset some of that. So it's gonna encourage, more recycling, and it'll give us a chance to recoup some of our expenses. You'll again probably hear, I don't mean to keep taking you under it, but, we have a great recycling program here because it's dependent. We put our trash basically out for a new 3-year contract in November. We got bids from Casella that currently does it, and from Echo Maine. And we actually were able to reduce our cost in this respect. Echo Maine is going to become our new recycling facility. And Maine has a inverted waste triangle that if you think of reduce, reuse, recycle, and then incinerate, then landfill. So the idea is that we're landfilling as little as possible. Echo Maine runs the incinerator in Portland, the one that's near where the old Sturbridge Yankee workshop used to be. And so now by using Echo Maine, all our stuff that doesn't get recycled is gonna get incinerated and then turned into ash, so we're gonna reduce our landfill footprint. Back when we did our last contract, Casella used to take our stuff up to the plant in Orrington, but that went bankrupt. And at this point, they say they'd like to, they don't own it, but they're hoping to see it get restarted, but it hasn't yet. So our mixed solid waste will be going to there to get incinerated. Then one of the side benefits of having our Bowdoin interns is that we get to tour different places with them. So we had reached out to Casella a couple years ago with our interns, and we got to tour their facility in Lewiston, where they sort our they take our single sort recycling along with everyone else's, and they sort it. Goes on a big conveyor belt, and there's things that are supposed to blow off paper here, and they've got something that rejects aluminum, so like shoots it off the thing. A lot of it still was hand picked, trying to pull out the recyclables amongst the trash and things thrown in the recycling bin. To be honest, the end product, when you look at the bales, you couldn't really tell a bale of recyclable the difference from a bale of mixed solid waste. There was so much stuff, because a lot of places do curbside trash pickup and recycling, and people don't necessarily really follow the rules. You know what happens if you violate the rules at our transfer station, Ed straightens you out. That doesn't happen when people do curbside. When we went to, this year we took the Bowdoin interns and we went to tour Echo Maine, since we knew we were gonna be asking them to be one of the people who bid for us. And it was much better waste products. You look at the bales and they looked like the plastic they were supposed to be. You didn't see all these extra things in. They are in the process of investing in a new plant in the old Sturbridge Yankee workshop building. It's gonna be state of the art. And it's gonna use air injection to do a lot of the sorting. And what were the stats? An average person can do something like 60 picks a minute, and these optical scanners and air injection can do hundreds. So it's going to increase the accuracy and quality. So that's where our single sort recycling is going to be going. They were also happy to have ours because ours is such good quality stuff. We don't have the trash in it. This will let them put the trash in it. But the cost of the town is we're paying to keep people to monitor recycling. So hopefully the EPR is gonna help us cover some of that. We probably won't recover all of it because they're gonna take the stats that we collect in fiscal year 26, and they're gonna take Topson's numbers and Savadis's numbers, and we're gonna go for each region of the state and come up with an average cost. So some of the towns that aren't paying to monitor the recycling are obviously gonna have lower costs than us. But to the extent we're getting anything back, we're gonna be ahead of the game where we are right now. Then we have right now what's called demolition debris, which is if you're at the transfer station, it ranges from couches to sheetrock to whatever people leave behind. Maine didn't want that stuff because a lot of it they can't burn in the incinerator. So they said they were fine with us talking to someone else about taking our demolition debris. Casella offered to take our demolition debris, as did the other company that bid, because they use it in the landfills. Because when they just put the mixed solid waste and the sludge and whatever else is in there, they end up with kind of a jelly mess. So the demolition debris helps solidify it. So they wanted ours for that, but they weren't giving us a price break because they wanted it for that. Grimmel's, and talked to them. They're willing to take our demolition debris at a better price than in the other places. And the other places, we have to pay a certain amount per truckload. Grimmel said since we're in town, they'll come haul it for free. So between the better price we were gonna get from Maine for our mixed solid waste and Grimmel's taking care of us on the demolition debris, we're gonna have lower costs and we're gonna be more green. We're gonna have better recycling and the stuff's gonna get incinerated and doesn't get recycled. So that's I think a bright spot for the town. So we're looking forward to doing everything we can to make extended use of responsibility over the top. All right, so I mentioned that one of the areas that I felt we needed to address this year, and you may recall Derek mentioning this last year, is that our wages were getting behind inflation. So just to kind of show it graphically, or in a minute, I'll show it. This was the inflation as of July 1st of 22, 23, and 24 for the CPIU Northeast, so basically our part of the country. It's got two different numbers there. It's got all inflation, which includes food and energy, and then all items without food and energy. So over the course of the 3 years, and I picked those dates because those are the dates our contracts give COLAs. The all item inflation was 13.5% over those 3 years. If you exclude food and energy, the 12.2%. I guess the hard part about excluding food and energy is the lower your income, the more important food and energy are. Some people aren't buying much besides food and energy. Our COLAs this year were 4, 4, 3, and 1, so a total of 11. And then as this shows graphically, Topson's the green line below. Our wages are getting behind inflation.
Everybody's getting behind the inflation.
Yep.
Everyone.
I wouldn't argue that.
I know.
But we're, we need to try to keep our workforce and things. And I think we have a lot of good quality employees that work hard for the town. And I think we need to be able to try to keep them as close to inflation as we can. So when you look at the numbers in the budgets, each department's wages have been budgeted for a 3% COLA. Beyond that would be subject to union negotiations, which are, as I said, ongoing. Longevity step increases, Kathy's included those as appropriate for where the person might be. Our health insurance went up by 9%, so she's budgeted 9% for the first 6 months, and she expects a 5% increase for the last 6 months. We have a category we'll come to later that's got room for payroll adjustments, and it may include health benefits too if need be. If maybe someone leaves us that was taken to buyout and someone comes back, takes the insurance, or someone was single and we have a family plan, something like that. Kathy's figured no change for dental insurance for the first 6 months because in fact it didn't change. And then a 2% increase for the last 6 months. Maine PERS went up slightly for our general retirement plan. It went up 0.3%. For the public safety plan, it went up 0.4%. Workers' comp is good news. I have to say that and I don't know if we just picked the right people to get injured, but, the past couple of years, our workers that have got injured on the job are fighting to come back to work every day. We've had some that we have to force them to go to our occupational health provider. And then we had a gentleman who, got hurt, ended up tearing his shoulder. And then I don't think he missed a day of work. He came to work for 3 more months till his surgery. And we modified his duties, so we didn't have to, use the arm that he couldn't things, but he had plenty of work to do. So we've been committed to making sure that we keep everyone working as much as we can. And like I said, we've had a lot of hardworking employees that don't want to take time off. So now it's been 2 years in a row that we've sent our workers' comp go down. And that's because of the type of people that work for the town. And then another new expense this year is the Maine paid family leave tax. The way it's written is it's assessed 1% on the town, and the town's allowed to ask the employees to pay up to 0.5%. It hasn't kicked in for most of our town yet because there was language in the statute that said that if you had a union contract that was executed before October of 2023, it would not go into effect until that contract is expired. And unless everyone agreed they wanted it to. And then we also have to negotiate it with the unions. So this is one of the things we've got on the table with the unions is for our non-union employees, it went into effect January 1st, taxes being collected 0.5% from the employees, 0.5% from the town. That's where we're working to get to with the unions. This is the same thing, but right now it's the tax isn't applied to the union, so we're not paying our 0.5 and the employees aren't paying anything for that. We expect our revenues to decrease by 1%. Development and building have slowed, so planning, you'll hear more about this when Sky does her presentation. We reduced planning and code revenue for that reason. Interest rates are gone down some, so we expect to get less interest this year. Additionally, we've got lower balances. We've had $360,000 sitting for about 5 years that was supposed to go to build a park that was approved 5 years ago. That's going to be an our end of the Frank J. Wood Bridge, but all the litigation slowed that down. 2 wonderful things happened with that. One is the state locked in our cost at the same price we were going to pay 5 years ago. So even though it's going to cost significantly more than the $360,000 that we were quoted to build it, the state's honoring that because they figured the litigation wasn't our fault. So thank you, state of Maine, for that. And then the other nice thing is that money's been getting interest and we've been getting the interest on it. So that's been, Kathy, what are the rates that you were able to get a lot last year? 2.5?
Close to 5% last year. Now you can see it that it was the longer that you invest for, the higher the rate, but that's changing now. And the highest rate right now is at between 1 and 3 months. So there's a little bit of uncertainty as to what to expect going forward. I mean, it's sort of foregone that they're gonna go down.
So we budgeted less. Go ahead.
Are you taking questions now, Mark?
We'll take anyone, whatever you want. Yes.
I was gonna hold off till the end, but I'm just, you'll take them now?
Yep,
Can I interrupt this and go back one slide for just a second?
sure.
All right, health insurance. So a 9% increase in the first 6 months and then a 5% increase above and beyond that from the last 6 months?
The difference is the health insurance year does not match the fiscal year.
Yeah, I understand that.
So the health insurance went up 9% as of January 1st. It will continue at that same number. So it's not going to go up 9% more July 1st, but it will be 9% over the number we budgeted for this year. And then Kathy, why don't you explain the other part? We expect this
so
little again.
we expect next January that we'll have another at least 5% increase.
So, yeah.
So
That's not sustainable. No.
It's not.
None?
it has been a lot lower. This is the 9 that we got this year is considerably more than we had had in a couple of years.
So this is health insurance on all the talking about, employee health insurance?
Yes, we get our health insurance through the Maine Municipal Employee Health Trust. So that's, we're relying, actually, we have a mixed plan where we have a plan with them, and then we supplement that plan for out-of-pocket and deductibles with an HRA. So there's two pieces to our health plan that we right now.
What percentage does the town pay?
We pay 85%. And if somebody comes across, and say you have a married person or partners that can go on their significant other's plan, then we give them a cash in lieu of taking our health insurance, which is,
Nice.
it's 9,300, but it's about 75% of the total cost of a single.
That's a 1-year deal, or is that,
It's all a 1-year deal.
it's what?
It's just a 1-year
It's a
deal.
1-year deal.
If you were able to get on somebody else's health plan, you have to prove to us every year that you have that health insurance in order to get the payment in lieu of health insurance.
And then you give them 75% of what a single plan would cost?
Well, no, we give them a flat 93%.
A flat what?
9,300, sorry. 93%.
A flat.
No,
I was gonna say.
It used to be a percentage, but at our last union negotiation, we locked in that number so that as it goes up, you still have the
Right.
same number, so it's not increasing.
I just have a comment, and I won't dwell on it until the next night, concerning, Pleasant Point Road. So we made the comment that the residents are saying, well, we'll put up with some flooding now in lieu of what?
In lieu of having the road rebuilt,
Okay. My concern is, and this town's notorious for it, is we take that and 10 years from now, they say, oh, we're tired of all this flooding. And then we have to do something and it costs us 5 times the amount of what it would cost us now. So that's just something I would like people to think about before we get more in-depth discussions.
and we'll have more of this on the 26th, but one of the people that would have to give us an easement, because the road needs to come up so much that it needs to be widened considerably too, you can't just have a 90-degree drop off. One of the people that would need to give us an easement to do that, we said at a prior meeting, he's got no interest in doing that because he doesn't want to see the road built up. So there's someone on the other side that said they really don't think it's wise to build it up because they're concerned about impounding more water behind it. But if the town wanted to do it, he'd probably be willing to grant the easement. But to do it that way, we'd almost have to move the whole road over because that's all the extra on one side, which would significantly increase the cost.
And look, okay, one final question. So in this case, where certain residents would give us easements to mitigate the problems they're experiencing, and they may experience more in the future, is the town able to protect themselves to say, we wanted to do this, and now you want us to change it, and it's going to cost us $8 million to do it?
I guess we could take it by eminent domain. So it's
Well,
obviously.
yeah, I don't want to
something,
do that, but I don't want to get just because one or two people or 10 people with a bridge don't want to do something and it gets delayed and the prices increases. And then we just have to blindly, pay this money for whatever reason.
Well, none of this we have to do. Ultimately.
Well, I hope you understand what I'm getting at today, because there's so
Well, I
many things.
understand your fear of, I guess as we try to prioritize our public spending, it's like. My thought or our thought is, we'll spend the money on the stuff that is most needed and wanted. So there's a lot of things that need money, we don't have to go around, so if they don't want something done, there's plenty of other things to work on.
Yeah, and there always will be. I guess it just comes in the big picture of, we're seeing stuff now, revenues are down, costs are gonna go up. People in the community center, this, that, and the other thing, we got to buy ambulances, fire trucks, police cars, etc. It's getting to a point, it's gonna be unsustainable at some point, and something's gonna have to give. So that's my concern. I mean, this town's great right now, we literally have no debt, and we would have no debt if we could call the bonds, is that correct?
Right.
So.
And we will after one bond gets paid off this year and one the following.
Right, so in the future, taking on new debt, will we finally work for years to get it down to literally nothing, and with the agreement that we would, through taxation, raise the funds. I would have an extremely hard time supporting anything like that. So, and that's all I'm gonna say for now, because we'll talk about
On that, what you just said, they said they're gonna live with the convenience of 6 or 8 hours. And can you drive through it when it's flooded?
What's the old phrase, turn around, don't
House
drown?
catches fire and you can't get to it.
Yeah.
No, it's-
That's nothing to worry about.
Well, it's like Meadow Road. Who dares to drive through that when it's flooded? People do.
you shouldn't.
I know,
But
right?
there is an alternate route there.
Huh?
There's an alternate route there.
There is, but so what?
I would appreciate it.
It's still bad.
I'm not forcing, I'm not looking to force anyone to do anything, but again, I don't want the town just to be hung out to dry. Because it didn't get acted on when the town wanted to act.
No,
I was just wondering, I haven't heard any discussion yet about what the accumulation of deferred maintenance actually amounts to this time. And how much are you actually down relative to deferred maintenance?
and I don't think that we are deferring maintenance.
Because it says it's one of the risk factors.
Certainly if you don't keep up, but I don't think there's anything we've deferred.
Right, yeah.
For instance, and I don't want to spend too much on the capital stuff right now because you gotta keep your own money. But like this building, anything we know about that needs to be done, we've had done. In the public safety building, we've noticed that the linoleum floors are starting to lift and need to be replaced, especially in the fire department. So the assistant town managers in the process of getting close to get that done. We have a fund that you'll notice in the capital that I've said not to put money into this year, that we put 350,000 in last year. That would help pay for, say, capital surprises in the future or potentially claim things. That fund has a balance of 650,000 right now. So we could have the heating system here all die. And there's money there to replace them. But at this point, I don't know of any maintenance that we've deferred. Select board's gonna have on the next agenda a request with some items at the transfer station that need to be replaced in trailers and things. And that was from capital maintenance money in this year's budget. So I think so far we're staying on top of things, but point well taken that if there are things that need to be fixed and we don't fix them, then yeah, they're gonna cost more later. These buildings, I've had a lot of people comment, they think they're new. So these buildings are 20 years old, but we've stayed on top of stuff and I think they're in good shape. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a question for Kathy. You said the 1 or 3 month, exceeding investments are the only thing, what is the APR rate on those?
I just did 3 months today for 1.5%. But it's now it's the lower ones that are getting the higher. So it's sort of inverted the way it is right now, so it doesn't go well for increases in the future. Which we went for many years getting pretty much nothing. The last 2 years have been pretty much lovely. But that's starting to turn back again.
I was just curious because I got a 9 month today, 4.0.
You did.
On the positive side of the revenues, EMS billing, we're projecting to go up a little bit. You may recall a couple years ago, we were having issues because the fire department was literally going to 93% of all the calls in Bowdenham because they weren't adequately staffed and didn't have adequate arrangement. The bad part of that was we're not our fire department. The good part was we had extra EMS billing because of it. So this current budget, EMS billing was less than the last year, but it's starting to increase again. So we project a little bit more next year. We're also getting a little more revenue with solid waste, Parks and Rec, and Public Works. And we're projecting the excise tax will be stable with what it's been. What I'd like to do is go to page 8 of your booklet. And I'm allowed to do this tonight because Justin isn't here. Justin hates it when we ever talk about what the tax rate might be.
Definitely.
So now I get to do it tonight. So the final tax rate is a mixture of things that we can control, most importantly, our expenditures, revenues. And we also plan to review our fees over the next few months, because a lot of fees we haven't increased in years. So we're gonna look, say, at the fees of the planning department and compare them to other towns and see where we're at. So we may be able to squeeze a little more out of our revenue. Then there's things we can't control. There's the MSCD 75 budget, and whatever the state decides to fund it. There's always the perennial fight that, the state fund is what it considers 55% of the essential programs. But the school will tell you that, what the state considers essential is much less than actually is essential. But in the end, our share of the budget's based on our student population or our town's valuation, and we're basically told you gotta pay this. Same thing with the county budget. In the end, we're told we have to pay our share. Municipal revenue sharing, the state chooses what it's gonna give us. The municipal net budget, that line shouldn't have been in that place, it should have been, sorry about it. The net budget, we think it's gonna, expenditures, we've projected a decrease of 2%. Something else we can't control is the valuation of the town. Well, Justin does it, he's gonna give everyone their fair valuation. And then one thing that's a little bit of both is how much of the surplus we apply to the budget. So if you look at page 8, right? Page 6, you're right, yeah, that was very small. So I'm gonna tell you what we've done for assumptions, and then I'll tell you where the assumptions may or may not be changing, and then what we think the end result will be, or what we were shooting for end result. For fiscal year 26, we have assumed that the county would increase its budget by 5%. That may or may not be reality, but I also don't want to assume the county's going to increase its budget by 13%, because what that means is to get the tax rates to something that we think we want, we got to cut the town stuff even more, so then we get more burden on maintenance and everything else. We've also assumed that the school's going to raise its budget by 5%. That may or may not be a fallacy as well, but if people want to keep it at that, then they need to go advocate at the school meetings and ask them to, try to consider the taxpayers. A couple years ago, Derek and I went to the school budget meeting at Williams Cone School. A total of 5 citizens came and weighed in on it, and Derek and I were 2 of them. So I think the school doesn't really get a lot of pressure being told, hey, you need to try to contain this or that. The tip is pretty much, we have to pay whatever percentages, so that is pretty much right on, that's not gonna change. Overlay is the extra money that's included in case someone doesn't pay their taxes. We have historically used a pretty small number, but historically that number's worked fine for us, so we propose to leave that there. Now I'm gonna give you a little maybe good news. So the state revenue sharing, we budgeted at the same as last year. Last year was a cut from the prior year. Suspiciously, the cut was just about the same amount that the state owed us for senior tax stabilization payments. That program cost the state a lot more than the state had expected. And the state eventually came up with the money they had to pay us in April, but then our revenue sharing went down. So maybe that's connected. Homestead reimbursements and business equipment tax reimbursements, we've held the same as last year. Other revenue, you'll hear, as we go through budgets, where they're arrived at, but that's our projections, what we think they're gonna be. Last year, the town spent 2.3 million of surplus to get the overall tax rate, and I'm not saying anyone's particular house, because as you'll hear when I pretend I'm Justin later, Justin adjusts everyone's taxes each year based on what he feels the value of their property is. So in general, in last year, higher value properties went up a bigger increase than lower, so they got more of the tax burden. In general, commercial property has been devalued compared to residential, or hasn't gone up as much. So our tax burden has shifted more to residential properties and less on commercial. But the overall tax increase for just last year would have been 3.5%, based on the town spending 2.3 million of its surplus. The town spent, kept the unallocated fund balance at the maximum amount it could. So we have a policy that says the town is not supposed to keep more than 18% of its unallocated fund balance. But when the select board said, let's spend 2.3 million to get the taxes a little lower, it still kept us at the maximum, so we had 18%. And then we had about $300,000 that was set aside in a reserve for Tedford Road construction, because we knew that project was coming. This year, we don't think we're gonna have 2.3 million to spend, and we also don't want to be in a situation where we need to have 2.3 million to spend, because ideally we should be using much less surplus. So when Kathy and I were working on the budget, we reduced the amount that we're expecting to 1.9 million. We're thinking we're gonna have around 500,000 of surplus in this year's budget. So of that 1.9, 500 should come there. And then the maybe good news on the revenue sharing is, after we started drafting this budget, last Monday, the state came out with its projections for this upcoming fiscal year. If those projections hold true, and the governor has said she wants to honor them, but there's a lot of pressures in Augusta, so we don't know in the end that's gonna change. But right now, we get 480,000 more of revenue sharing in next year's budget than we have in this year's. Which would mean we could only need to use 1.5 million of surplus potential instead of 1.9. So we've been concerned, and the other thing that's not included in here yet is any increase in valuation, which things certainly are increasing the way that they were, but there's been a few new houses built, and there's been some increase, so likely we'll have a little increase in valuation, but that's not worked yet. But we thought we should make this budget, say, the worst case scenario as far as what you see available here in deductions. So while we've got 1.9 million there, I'm hopeful that in the end it might be more like 1.4 or something to just go towards that. So the net result, and this is where hopefully Justin's not watching, is that if we applied the 1.9 and the assumptions panned out as here, it would be a tax increase of about 3.8%, would be the average. But again, once some of these other things work in, it may be less, but if the school and the county go more than 5, it could be more. But kind of our theory is, I don't want to cut the town just because the school's spending more than a sustainable rate, because then we end up whether we're making.
The question I have, this is out of curiosity, 500,000 isn't much to have left over that we haven't spent, because there's been a lot more amounts greater than the 500 in past years, which I've always been an advocate is the people's money and should have back home. In a way it does, it helps relieve taxes, but why is there always money left over in that amount, either 500 and higher? Are we over budgeting? What's happening? Are people leaving and we don't replace them, or that's the question I have.
Sure. I think Kathy has definitely made a conscious effort to avoid over budgeting.
I'm sure.
We've had certain things now that we're trying to group, so that if something runs a little over, something will be a little under. I mean, I got nervous last year, coming in May, because our fire department had to spend a lot more on overtime than they were expecting. And I was almost worried we have to have a special town meeting. And the fire department got bailed out by the police department. Well, between the two, they were almost right on. It was what, 20 to 40,000 left was all it was at the end of the year between the police and fire. Yeah. So like this year, one area that is going to be, I can guarantee we're gonna have at least 100,000 left is in public works. You may recall last year, we made a pitch to have a deputy public works director, so that someone can start learning from Dennis and be ready to take over when he chooses to retire and stuff, and to help manage stuff. And we've been trying to hire someone for months, and only last week we had our first interview, and we have another one next week. So that position, hopefully we'll have filled by mid-March, but that's
Yeah.
3/4 of the way through the
That's
year.
right.
So that's a big chunk.
Yep.
We've also had a truck driver position open probably for 6 months now, so we were trying to fill and we can't find anyone. So between the two of those, it's probably already 100,000 we're gonna have left there.
Thank you.
So it's hard to cut things too close because like I said, we can end up in a situation where we run out of money. But we made a conscious effort to try to find to ratchet it down. And you're right, some prior years there was $1 million left and now, and we may not even have the 500,000.
Right,
But
right.
we are trying to tighten that up.
But I think that's good what you're explaining, so that's,
Mark, I mean, you said earlier that you basically budget on almost a worst case scenario, so that we're not kind of short on anything.
Yeah.
And I would assume that would contribute to the surplus that has come in better than expected.
Right.
And I'm all in favor of worst case scenarios because God forbid that anything happened and we totally under budgeted and we're out shit street of that or Pleasant Point Road.
And as Ruth said, it may take a year, but it comes back, because I completely believe our department heads and our employees don't waste money. So if we don't need it, we don't spend it, and then it gets to be rolled over towards the next year as surplus for the next budget. So that's kind of the number Kathy and I were shooting at, somewhere between 3% to 4% if we were.
My other comment concerning using, now I lost my train of thought. That money to help with the tax rate is, 10+ years ago, the schools did that. They were using, extra money to keep their budget down. So one year they said, we're not doing it anymore. And then we got slammed hard with this major increase. My comment at the time and since then was, well, yeah, okay, fine. Use that money, but maybe, taper more a bit. Yes, you're not going to maybe get the numbers down where you want, but then again, well, what do you want? You want a low tax rate, a little higher than huge. How much pain do you want? Can you take? So that's my comment concerning that.
And Derek's philosophy, which he kind of trained me in, and I've agreed with, is he always wanted to keep things smooth. And so somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% is kind of what we're shooting.
Yeah, try to keep the spikes out of it.
Exactly. Last year, because of the senior tax stabilization, unfortunately, a lot of people got a spike, but wasn't that we caused it, because the program ended. But anything, and I just want to emphasize now, anything in this book is just basically meant to be a starting point, and I, kind of what Kathy and I thought would be responsible. Absolutely no offense is taken if you guys say, no, we want you to spend more here or less here, or so feel free to ask all the questions you want over the next 3 nights and then debate it with your groups and we're, because it's really your budget, it's the town's budget, it's not ours. And we're happy to take any type of suggestions and no offense taken by people. All right. So this last graph, I thought was kind of cool, colors. This kind of shows over the past 5 years, the total amount of the expenditures, because again, that's the one thing we can really control is our expenditures. And it shows how much of it was operating, capital, or debt service. Fiscal year 23 was the one where we paid off those bonds early, so that's why that one has a lot of debt service that year, and that's why there's very little green the following years. And then operating expenses have increased. And intentionally this year, we cut back on capital for 2 reasons, and you'll hear more about this one today. But one is because last year, Derek intentionally increased capital. If you remember, we had almost $1 million of ARPA money that ended up putting into surplus. So we needed to use that. We had some good projects at Third Road Gulf, for instance, that needed it. So last year, capital expenditures were kind of intentionally juiced. So there was about $1 million extra in it last year. And this year, we've intentionally cut back on capital because of all the union contracts being up and we need to get wages adjusted. So that's because we overall wanted to try to get to that 3 to 4% tax increase. And we knew that we're gonna be spending more money on people. We this year proposed to spend less on the capital. And the big chunk of that is that 350,000 that I didn't put towards building up the future capital reserves because like I said, if we have some crisis, we have 650,000 sitting there right now, that is covered by whatever. All right, so that's the end of the overview. Real quickly go into administration. So now we are on. I know you're about to hear from someone else. Page 17. Thank you. All right. So in the end, for this department, we've got a 0% increase. And this department pays for this full-time staff, which is myself, Jeff, and Rose. And I had a question earlier today that wanted to know how come wages had a 3% increase, but ours went down by 3%. The town has in its personnel policy that if you, or let me go back a little further. The Maine state retirement system, I'm gonna call it a retire, rehire tax. So if you are you retired from the Maine state retirement system and you go into a position that would normally be covered by the retirement system, someone has to pay, the town or the employee has to pay a 5% penalty of that employee's salary. So if the employee has to pay it, then the employee basically gets a deduction off the top of their pay for 5%. That employee still has to pay social security taxes on that money, as does the town. The employee still has to pay income taxes on that money, both state and federal. But that 5% of their pay doesn't benefit the employee. I guess in some respects, it's a tacit admission that the system isn't fully funded, because ideally should have been the wages from the past, over the past 25 years to pay for my pension, not a current employee, 5% of their pay going to support it. So the Town of Topsham personnel policy says that I'm a retiree from the Brunswick Police Department, Jeff's one from the Brunswick Fire Department. So 5% of our pay has to be paid to the Maine State Retirement System. We ran the numbers, and both we and the town make off better if we reduce our pay by 5% than it otherwise would be, and the town pays the penalty. In that case, I'm not paying income tax on that money that I never get. I'm not paying social security tax on the money I never get. The town's not paying social security tax on that money I never get, not paying Medicare tax, and town's not paying towards my retirement savings with the ICMA plan that we have for that, the 457 plan. So it's win-win. The only person that doesn't win on it is the taxing authorities, but they get plenty of money other ways. So that's why, even though this budget would include a COLA of 3% for Jeff and myself, in the end, it ends up being less because this year we implemented that program. We take 5% less pay in return for the town paying the penalty. So our personnel policy was amended to allow the town manager and the employee to take a commensurate pay reduction in return. So ultimately, it's still, I'm getting 5% less than I would if I was working in another town. So that it's the employee who's paying it, but the town and the employee make it a little better off. So anyway, that's a long story to tell you why, even though there's a 3% wage increase, our department isn't going up.
So where is that 5% that the town's paying now reflected in the budget?
More like Kathy, let's do
That it's in the retirement fund.
Yeah.
All right, and then we budgeted for the select board a 3% increase in their wages. I know a couple of them have told me they don't think they want the increase because they just feel like they do this as community public service. The only thing I caution them if they don't want that is if they don't take the increase, they're gonna get a pay cut this year. Because the state's main paid family leave tax of that 1%, which is 5.5 to employee, 0.5 to that applies even to part-time positions. It even applies to our high school referees. So if we've got a high school kid that we're paying minimum wage to work 3 hours a month in October and November, we have to take that tax out of their pay.
Well, Mark, excuse me.
Yeah.
When you're going through what row are you on when you're talking about, like yours and, your employees' pay and what you were just referring to with the select board. What, you're on page 17, is that?
Yep, so the top line, so it's, line 501005, that is my pay, Jeff's pay, and Rose's pay.
Okay.
And then the select board's pay is line 501001. They're called the officers, the municipal officers.
Is that section?
501001. Okay, I see, yep, select board, got it, thank you.
I have a comment concerning the stipend of the board. And I say this for someone who's sat over there for 6 years. I don't believe in pays for that. No one, if you're in this job and you need that money, you're in the wrong job. It's the money you get really is supposed to help you with incurred costs, gas money, things of that. Believe me, you're not spending all that money on gas and responsibilities of the board. Now, this is only my personal opinion, and I felt this way when I was sat there. You know, some towns, Portland, for example, they used to give healthcare as an incentive to sit on the council and all kinds of craziness. You know, especially in the town of Topsham and smaller towns. If you're running for that seat, you're here because you want to do something, you want to help your town, you want to do the right thing, whatever it may be. You're not here for the money. And if you are here for the money, then maybe you should not consider running for re-election. So it's not a personal thing against anyone. It's just a general statement for that type of position. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
I have a comment on that. When I ran for office, I had no idea that there was any money at all involved. And it wasn't until I became on the board that I knew. And I get $54 a week is my salary.
That's what we got
Yeah.
for 9 years. And speaking on that, not that I don't value our board, because I do, but did you look at other towns, what this like, at one time, Topsham was higher than most towns for this?
I haven't done the census, but we can certainly do that if people want. I suspect it's probably lower than most now.
It could be, but at that time it was, I was shocked when I did the looking, so it'd be a good thing to look at.
Well, if they're getting paid 54 and, years ago it was 54, there ought to be an appropriate, compensation rate look.
Why not?
Why?
And I hear
Did
what
you
you're
just,
saying.
didn't you
That's
just
your
listen to what I had to
You
say?
know what, that's your opinion. And somebody voted to give them money for whatever duties
No,
you're doing.
nobody did vote to give them money. They
Well,
voted to
somehow
be a
got in the
selectman.
budget. I mean, you've got your opinion. Thank you very much. Other people have their opinion. I mean, if you don't like it, then raise it up for legislation for a change. I mean, they're spending their time and they're, away from their kids. Maybe they have to, someone caring. You don't know what's going on with their lives.
So don't run. If this is going to impact your life that much.
Okay, thank you
not
for
run.
your opinion. Noted.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Go ahead, Mark.
Economic and community development. So this used to be John Shattuck, if you remember, a few years back. So now we are on page. And
Oh, which one you want?
get that.
Which one?
Economic and community development, page 21. So this you're gonna see increase primarily for 2 reasons. First is we are not proposing filling that, 21. We're not proposing filling the position. Jeff and I have filled in for it since, John Shattuck retired. And we feel like we've been adequately able to cover it. So it's costing us about $130,000 a year to have that position filled. And we just think the better use is for $130,000. So we feel that Jeff and I can continue to cover it. We don't have a lot of areas for business to come into at this point. We don't have a lot of, we get maybe a call every 6 months or something. We staff the TDI meetings and things, but it's certainly not a burden that we can handle. So we propose not to put that position back in. Those of you who've been on this committee for a while may remember that Topsham Development Inc. has been giving money every year to build up a fund so that they'd have it if they needed to do something for economic development. One of the things they did for it a few years back was there was an opportunity to get a high pressure water connection in at the top of Can-Am while the Highlands was being built. In order to avoid having a special town meeting, TDI was able to act quickly, get it done. And then eventually the money got repaid to TDI. TDI had another town meeting that was spent. Last 2 years ago, TDI commissioned a survey of the Topsham Fair Mall Road. Because the older part, there's a lot of question as to where the right of way is. And in order to do some of the development that maybe wants to be done on the road, the first step is to figure out where the road is. And then the town last year repaid that money. TDI comes to the select board before they spend the money, so it's not like they're off just spending willy-nilly. But this last fall, they came to the select board and they said they would like to figure out what the cost would be to extend water and sewer west of I-95 to that area that could be developed. The Allen parcel that's immediately next to the highway, the kind of hill area there. Also to the Crooker property, because this, as you forever just been talking about redeveloping that. And then to the former annex. The former annex has sewer that cuts across the Mount Ararat playing fields now that goes to the housing that's up at Parliament in Congress, but it doesn't have water up there. So the purpose of this study is to figure out what would need to be done. Water district, they were approached by TDI, they've agreed to pay $5,000 towards it. The sewers agreed to pay $5,000 towards it. So in the end, it's costing about $55,000 of TDI's money. I have put in here a request to repay that money to them. But if you're looking for a place that you want to try to cut the budget and you say, you know, we can only afford 25 of it this year, we'll do 25 next year, and they haven't even said, Mark, can you get us the money back? So if you decide you don't want to do this at all, you don't have to, but that's just to explain what that increase is. So that's the 100% increase in that line is because last year we paid 25,000 to the survey. This proposes to reimburse 50 of the cost of the.
We would be required to reimburse them at some point in time?
No.
No.
No, this money is completely at the town's discretion. So yeah, we don't have, it would just mean they're gonna have less money to
Do good work.
potentially do something.
Didn't we do a loan to, when we did the park on the Cadence Road, did we use some of that money once too?
I don't know. It's before my
I think
time.
we did.
So-
Yes.
So there's been some talk that they wanted to do like maybe a revolving loan fund or something with that money. And then Derek had told them, oh, I know, it was the group that wants to build the ice rink. They actually wanted a grant from the TDI. And Derek had told TDI at the time, he said, you don't want to do any of this stuff unless you have policies that are well vetted about what conditions are, when things are paid back, how you do these things. And all that, you want to get support from the select board too before you do it, because you may find you never get repaid this money. You know, if the select board isn't happy with the way that you're spending the money, they're probably not going to be doing what I'm proposing here, which they listen to. And so there's no talk on the table right now of making grants out of the money or anything like that.
Do you have any idea what they have for a balance at this point in time?
But they haven't paid all of the bill yet, but their balance is right around 350,000.
What is the increase of 450% for your dues and membership?
That's the next one. So good, you prompted a nice question. So the Brunswick used to be called the Mid-Coast Chamber of Commerce, and now it's the Bath Brunswick Chamber of Commerce. They're in the process, they want to change the name to be the Bath Brunswick Topsham Chamber of Commerce. And they've approached and said that they would like the town to help them because they want to do more to service businesses in Topsham. But they're also having trouble making their budget. So they asked for $10,000. So that's what that one is. There is 1,000 of it is money that we use for other things. The biggest chunk of that is for something called Build Maine, that we sponsor it, and then we get to have an unlimited number of both staff members and CPIC members and planning board. Anyone who wants to go to a conference that talks about responsible and sustainable development that happens in June.
Yes, thank you.
So that's the kind of the ongoing expense we paid out of that usually. But the other 10,000 is for the Chamber of Commerce, so.
I'm sorry, so what were we paying when we weren't involved in that? Who were we paying those type of dues to, or it was that amount of money that we?
No,
Or is this
you
all
know, this
brand
last
new?
year was just, I think it was 2,000 last year.
Okay.
We spent 500 to this Build Maine, but that's
Yeah,
the 600 for this year. And then we only because the bill gets sent to John Shattuck, who had been gone for a year, we didn't even pay our regular dues to the Chamber of Commerce last year. So that's why last year we only spent 500.
So I guess I'm gonna ask, because I don't know anything about the chamber down here, but, so they want $10,000 for Topsham to be included with the other two towns. Is that a good deal? I mean, it seems to me that we don't have a lot of businesses in Topsham so I'm just kind of curious how.
It would be, I think their hope is it would be recurring, so it would be annual after that.
Okay.
I mean, they do have a fair amount of Topsham businesses that are members and things.
You should start by having your name go first then.
Let's say alphabetical.
I served on the chamber board for quite a while, the executive board. And I enjoyed the chamber and stuff, but to come to us because they aren't making their bills, I don't like that kind of thinking. I think if they came to us and said, we'd like to have you start participating in the Mid-Coast Chamber and have Topsham part of it, that would be a little different story. But to just come in and want, just because they aren't making their bills, want us to rescue them, when there's all kinds of organizations that want donations, and basically that's what that is. And we said no to no donations, so that's just my input. We'll discuss it further.
And then, they have, the first part of you, they have said, hey, we'd like to have someone more, someone represent you on our board and things.
Yep.
And I've actually handed that to the TDI, that
Yep.
you've got a member that wants to go to the chamber
Sure.
meetings.
Sure.
So even if we decided not to do the 10,000, then we probably want to go back to the 2 of last year, so that we'd have money to do a regular membership plus the building.
Sure.
Is there a return on investment with that 10,000? What do they do specific for towns in general? I'm only asking because my business was on so I don't know what the Chamber of Commerce, what it promotes, how it helps the economy or the economic development of a small business, other than just networking between small businesses.
I think that's mostly what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is in networking. I mean, they haven't had any money for years to really come in and help a business and.
So Ryan, you're telling me they said no because they don't
Right.
agree with the product you sell?
At the time, yeah,
What about now?
I sold my
terrible.
business, so
Oh, okay.
not as,
Well, what do you think the attitude is now?
I don't know because I didn't go back.
Okay. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if a Topsham business gets excluded because someone doesn't like what they're selling legally, then absolutely not.
Okay,
Moving on.
so that's the big change in this budget was the repayment of money in this. And that's it for economic development. Essential services, which is. Yes, please. Occasional, if it has something that. We think we can meet the needs, we'll apply for federal grants and stuff. So I won't, unless people have questions about specific lines, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but in general, these are things that benefit the whole town rather than a particular department. The advertising pays for that piece we have every month in the crier. It gives us a chance to advertise what's going on. I think the biggest, I know the Times Record's made an effort to try to become a little more local and stuff now. But I think the biggest issue towns have had, or anyone, local municipalities, since newspapers started going down the drain,
Oh,
is that it's hard to get the word out about anything. It used to be, when I started at the police department 25 years ago, that we had a reporter who would be there every morning to come in and get the details. If you wanted to get something, the word out, you can get it. Everyone got a copy at their house. It was a nice common piece of knowledge. Unfortunately, that's gone, and we try to, I mean, our best, it's gonna take about a minute, but our best common base of knowledge now is the sign out front. More people see that than probably any publication. So if we get a meeting that we wanna, get people to come to, we put it up there. Unfortunately, we're limited on the amount of letters that we can do that, because someone in this room has a husband that's a traffic engineer, and I get in trouble if we have too many letters on our sign.
yeah.
It's nice to know you listen.
But our monthly piece in the crier, it goes to everyone's house in Topsham. And we put stuff in that, and if people choose to open it up, they can kind of see what's going on in the town and what things are available. So
Well,
that's,
the website's up to date all the time, right? The meetings and
Yep.
things, right? But a lot of people, remember when we had all those neighborhood meetings, they said the town doesn't communicate and they had a fit. And so we said, you know, we have the website, we have the newspaper, and they just still want to be, I don't have time for that. But how come you don't put flyers at schools and stuff like that? So the less we do, the more the public becomes curious. So,
those are probably our three big ways to get things out.
right,
Crier
yeah,
ad,
that's
the
what I thought.
website, and the sign up for.
Yeah.
So the dues on here pay for our Maine Municipal Association dues. Professional development, pays for people's classes, paid for Sky went to a class in Vermont on playing stuff and came up with a great idea, something, called a committee partnership agreement. This before a committee launches a new endeavor, they have to take some time filling this out, figure out exactly how much staff time is going to be needed. What is it that's trying to accomplish, and then the select board gets an opportunity to look at and approve it before the committee goes off in a new direction or something. But that was all as a result of the class that she was recently at. Thanks. Education reimbursement, you noticed none of it got used last year, but we don't want to take it out because we like to push that. We've got one employee that I'm hoping will get her bachelor's finished up so that when someone retires, she can take that person's place. So she's at least in one class right now. So that's, and if the money doesn't get spent, it's none of that surplus that gets rolled over next year, but we'd like to still continue to have education reimbursement in the budget. The biggest line here is the leases and licenses. A lot of our software now, you don't buy anymore, you just lease it. So this pays for our accounting software, pays for the company that maintains our computer network, pays for a subscription to something Justin would use if we had someone challenge a commercial appraisal, pays for our GIS, pays for there's a computer program that runs our heating systems in this building, the next one that pays for that and to have it maintained each year and things. So we've looked at that line hard because it seems like all these companies we have relationships with, they all go up 3 to 5% a year. I mean, we'd like it to be 3%, it's usually more. For instance, Munis went up by about $6,000, but then we took a hard look in the parts that we weren't really using. So we canceled those parts, so we're able to get it down to a number that still fit within this year's budget. So that's, as these things come up, we look at them, try to find ways to save money, but that's where the biggest chunk here. And we reduced publication because we found out it was double budgeted. It was budgeted for the town warrant, meeting warrant was budgeted both in here and in the clerk's budget, so we left it in the clerk's budget and took it out of here. We also reduced postage because it's an off election year. Last year, remember, part of the election, tons of mail-in ballots, which have to have postage paid. This year, we're not paying postage for those, so we reduced that. And then we hoped that recode would have finished this year, so codification had been bumped up significantly to help pay for that. But recode's not going to finish, it's not going to be ready for this town meeting. So we're dropping this down, but we'll do at the end of the year, we'll have to carry the extra money over to next year to pay for recode when it happens. So we don't need a budget for that every 2 years in a row.
Question, why does the town have to pay $15,000 to the Humane Society?
State law. State law. Yeah, every town has to contract.
Right.
Someone to take care of their stray dogs and animals.
Yeah.
So then you're on the dog post.
We do, but they have to have a place to put them.
Right,
So,
exactly.
and it has to be a place you could drop off your strays. So they used to have this police chief in Brunswick, and it used to come out of the police budget there. And he used to say, "Oh, why are we paying for this thing? I could get a dog a place to comfort in, every one of them, keep it in this." So I got kind of.
Great impression.
So I tried to use the flea market thing, and at the time, we had an animal control officer that lived in Durham. So I contacted the Androscoggin County Animal Shelter, and I said, "Hey, would you be willing to give us a price for our animals?" And they told me, "Oh, no, you're in the service area of the Coastal Humane Society." So it's like a little oligopoly, that they wouldn't give me a price. And they don't figure the price, because the other thing, my frustration in Brunswick is, and I'm not besmirching anyone that was in the military, but for whatever reason, when the base was there, we had a lot more stray dogs, I think because people got transferred out and sometimes couldn't take dogs to the new duty station. But after the base closed, our numbers were cut in half of stray animals, but the shelter didn't care. So they figure our fee based on the population of the town. So, yeah, we have no choice unless, I guess one thing we could do is if we wanted to say that the solid waste director has to house any stray animal.
I have a nice spot on the hill overlooking two beautiful ponds.
We did that study, what, 15, 20 years ago, to see by the time you paid extra people stuff, really, this amount is cheap, really, to house your animals, and we gotta have it by law anyway. So, but we looked at that and it was a big expense and it'd have to have more people and pick up doo-doo and.
I think the barn it is actually.
But it was a big expense, as I remember.
All right, now I'm tired of hearing from me, so do you want you a bathroom break before you hear from Kathy or not?
I do have a question, if it's okay. On that new payment tax that we have to pay and that employees pay, do coaches for recreation have to?
Yes, they do.
See, that is what, and we have to pay on all the coaches.
Well, we pay the 0.5%.
That's
They
what I
have to-
mean.
And
And they do too. Huh? I know,
Not school.
We have to pay it on you guys. Oh, well, not you.
it's not me
You're
anymore,
We have to pay it on the selectmen too.
right?
So why don't we take a 5-minute break and then we'll turn it over to Kathy?
Okay, so last year we combined the tax office with finance. So this is our first, so this has been almost through a year. So our finance office consists of myself and Brandy, and she is our finance assistant. The tax office is Ed Bobalik. We have a full-time tax collector clerk, and that is turning to the end. Then we have a part-time assistant, tax collector / clerk, and her name is Rebecca. From the audit, audit has been in process for quite a while. We're in the final stages right now. The person in charge, her due date was 12/30, and the last I heard from her was Christmas Eve, and I was so, but anyway, it is in the works, and so the expenditures exceeded revenue by $643,000.
Are you on a page of?
18.
Not for this, it is gonna be page 18.
Okay, thank you.
That's my budget, you know. The unassigned general fund balance decreased by 14. And I lost it. Alright, unassigned general fund balance decreased by $1,417,877. And we used 2.3 million to reduce the current year's tax commitment. You guys we'll post the audit on the website when it's completed. Fingers crossed, maybe this week. For the budget for the finance office and our revenues, we'll go through revenues in mass, or do you want me to go through my 2 pages? All right, my 2 pages on revenue are on page 9. And basically the stuff that's in page 9 is really the stuff that nobody else claims, really. We have the it's the highway grant money that we get. Most of them are like one time a year that you get the money. We have the snowmobile reimbursement. We charge fees for people that bounce checks for us. The homestead, the Betty, and the renewable energy, those are all related to our tax commitment. The state fund revenue sharing, as Mark said, we got the 2.3 had 2.1 million for our projected state revenue sharing. Tree growth, veterans exemption, the dividend line isn't really dividends. It's basically because we go on to MMA, we get all our insurance coverage through MMA, and 2, the PNC, which is the property and casualty piece, and the workers' comp, they actually they returned because it's like a cooperative. So once they get, I want to say their audit or their internal audit or whatever it is they do, they give us back a little kick. There's a little piece that comes back every year, one for PNC and one for workers' comp. It has nothing to do with the workers' comp audit, which is where they look at what we thought we were gonna pay people, and then they look at what we did pay people, and then we have to true it up after that. We used to do it with they contracted with somebody and we'd work with them at the end of the year because it would all be calendar year. And now they decided they don't want to pay them anymore, so they make us do all the work. So we just finished that, and she's actually, I put it in last week, and she said we're gonna have the results within 2 weeks, but let's see about that. What else we got? Dividends. Miscellaneous really is just miscellaneous. It's basically the stuff that nobody else claims.
Can we get more of that?
Yeah, okay. Sometimes we have like, you know, we might sell some furniture or something that just doesn't belong anywhere else, and sometimes we actually.
So all of your desks are going.
Also in there, for some reason, we usually get a couple of abandoned properties every. We usually get at least 2 a year. I don't know why, but we do. And then the last one is the interest on investments. And I passed it because I really don't know. I mean, once we get to the end of the budget process, I think we'll have some more clarity on where interest rates are gonna go. And then we can adjust it as needed. And the bottom half, we have, this is basically the tax office. We have IFW, which is Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Agent fees. We have lien fees. We have cable franchise fees, which was kind of interesting because I put down 125. And we just got we get our fees twice a year. So we just got July through December, and it was $56,776. So that's gonna, that actually is projecting down. So I don't even, 125 might not be, I mean, maybe too much. Auto excise,
So I'm sorry, so about half of that is where you think we're gonna be?
half, no, the cable now, because we're gonna get another payment.
Oh, okay.
So I put in 125 based on 124.8.
Okay,
We got it in
gotcha, okay.
24. But we've gotten 1/2 of the year and that was 56.
Gotcha, thank you.
But usually every 6 months it's been going down since in the last 5 years.
Is that because the fiber optics? Did you
That's
think?
because people are cutting the cord.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Auto excise, right now, we're pretty good on budget to actual on that one, and we're projecting that we're gonna be about even. We're not projecting an increase in that number. Boat excise, pretty much just went with what was last year. Around 10 grand. Taxes on interest, 27,000. And that's up a little bit from, if you could look at the 12/31/24, it's about 24. We don't lean until August, so I don't suspect that we're gonna see a lot of interest being paid between now and then. So I just took the half and added about 5 grand to the auto agent. If you look at it, the split, we got 21,040 in for our half a year, projected 42 for the next.
I have a question. We went up on that fee
We did,
and we're still minus.
yeah, because I don't think we're gonna get 47,000.
Right. And we went to $5, okay? And then I have the same question on inland fisheries. Why is that? Because people are doing more online?
I'm gonna say yes on that.
Okay, that's quite a drop.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. Will you just tell me what ARPA and what it is?
Oh, ARPA was the American Recovery Act.
Yeah.
And that was a one-shot deal. And we got, we didn't locate a project that I didn't make the decision. But you had choices. You could just put it in surplus or you could devote it to a project. I think we had some projects that ended up going through. So it's not recurring.
What is Betty? Who's that?
What is what?
Betty reimbursement.
Betty is part of the business
It's better.
equipment.
Business equipment tax
exemption.
reimbursement,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's part of the tax commitment based on how much the individual taxpayers, the business, people that own the business equipment can apply for exemptions.
That's up if we got more
We
businesses.
recharge the tax.
Exactly.
When they buy the equipment, they pay a tax.
So if you're okay with revenue, then I'll go back to the expense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the interest on investments and, which is estimated for FY 25 at 230,000. I don't know what your aggregate principal is, but that seems like a pretty hefty return. What sort of
it is,
investments do you have?
but basically we only invest in CDs. And we usually get them in 2 million chunks. And usually in the past, we can have invested at any one time about $8 million. Now we're down around $6 million every.
Okay.
So
What kind of terms have you been getting this past couple of years?
what I had said earlier, that it used to be that the longer you invested for, the higher the return, and now it seems to be peaked between 3 and 6 months.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what I do. I'm just investing it. Once we get to, like, when we're in September, we're not doing a lot of investment because we're waiting for the taxes to come in.
Right.
And then we have that 6-month period, and then when we get to March and April, we're about to start collecting on our second installment for taxes, so we're kind of low then. So, but for the most part, we have at least 4 million throughout the year, and then the other 4 million are sort of we take it when we need it and then put it back when we don't.
Is it FDIC insured?
Yes, that's what the Cedars program does, is what it does. It's I think I'm not really sure who runs it. I think it's the state. And they divide up your money into $250,000 pieces, and they put it in all those different banks.
Right.
So that you're always completely FDIC insured, no repurchase agreements, no nothing.
Yeah.
What's that? For our department, we are at, we had a whole different configuration last year. So we have a new full-time person that started last January. We have a new part-time person that started in July. And the differences in those things are pretty much based on the new turnover of these are the benefits that people have. We have some increased participation in our retirement fund, which is always good for employees. And the only things that the other benefits is our sick buyback. The only person that can get it is me, because everybody else is in the union. The lien costs are, you can see that we've already paid $52.05 this year, and that's because most of the costs are incurred in August when we file our liens. Then there's some additional costs when we foreclose. And then basically the rest of the money for this year is gonna be to discharge liens as people pay them off. That's why there's only there's about $500 left in our budget line for this year. So, and I believe that's a pretty good number for the total.
Does the town have much of an inventory of foreclosed properties?
No.
No,
Do you have any-
Mark's the king of that.
Huh?
I said, Mark's the king of that.
Yes, he is. He's done a good job.
We've been averaging around 4 or 5 each year. And then what we do is, once we get the property, we send a form over a letter, basically says, here's the town's policy, basically, we don't want your property, we wanna try to find a way to get it back to you. And let's make a deal, not that they don't have to pay us everything they owe, but we work with them on terms of how long it takes them. The ones that we've, in the past couple of years that we've retained, that we'd rather not, I call it, the unofficial way of giving us a road. So we've got some subdivisions that might have had a road that's intended to be a private road. But it was assessed as a separate tax lot with a bill of $100 a year or something or other, or assessment of $100 a year, so the bill might even be less. And then the person, who was usually the developer, never conveyed it to a homeowners association or the people living there. So the developer just stopped paying, and then we end up with the property. So it's not really an unofficial way, it's not our road, we don't plow it or anything like that, but now we have it. A couple occasions I've been able to either get them to put together a homeowners association or deed it to someone in the subdivision. But the issue now that we've got is they changed the state law on tax acquired property, so that you have to go through processes and use realtors and all kinds of stuff. So some of the ones that we haven't been able to get someone to take
More
next
red
to it,
tape.
we'll probably just end up keeping them because, no realtor's gonna want this. The only substantial property we had left over from last year, I actually got a call a couple weeks ago from an attorney at Pine Tree Legal Assistance. And the state has a fund that you can apply one time only to help you get caught up on whatever is keeping you out of your home. So it might be a mortgage, might be power bill, whatever. In this case, it was, they need to get caught up on the taxes. So, the attorney has an application in with the Maine State Housing Authority for this program. I just have to give her the total that was owed, and when we give the people the total, it includes all the back taxes that are owed, the interest to date, and then we have to get our liability insurer, makes us declare the property to be municipal. So like for this particular property, we were paying $47 worth of insurance to protect us in case someone falls on our property. So that gets included. So the next select board meeting, we have an agenda item for them to approve the payout, and then the attorney's gonna finish the loan application, Maine State Housing Authority, and by sometime in March, we hope to have the property back in the neighborhood.
So that's a loan that the state makes to the delinquent taxpayer?
I always think this might be a grant program.
I think it is, yeah.
Sometimes the state does have a program. We had another property we owned for quite a while on Elm Street. And that piece, if the person had applied for this estate program, it's kind of like a reverse mortgage, basically. That if you're old enough and you're basically current, except for the current year's taxes, state will give the money to pay the taxes, and they take a mortgage on your property, and then they'll eventually get paid back when you die and it's sold or something.
Well, it's not free money though, I mean.
No, that was not free money. Yeah. So, but we've had pretty good luck with getting things back to the former owners.
Any more questions?
All right, now will be Justin.
Well, will he be able to hear you?
I hope so. I used to be a lecturer in church when I was growing up, and the elderly people in the back of the church would always tell my mother, "Remember when your son's the lecturer, because we always can hear him." Brought the word of the Lord to many people. We call Justin Yoda because usually he'll talk and he'll have you guys mystified with all his knowledge, and he's probably one of the best assessors in the state, bar none. So unfortunately, I've got big shoes to follow. But his page in the budget is page 20. And his wages are almost exclusively him. Which is why you see the 3% increase, because it's a 3% what we budgeted so far. He's asked to lower his part-time payroll simply because he hasn't found anyone that can really help him out too much. But he didn't want to cut it down to what he spent last year, because he does have someone that he thinks can help him with some of his viewings of houses. So he tries to get out to see every house in town, at least from the outside, once every 5 years. So between his part-time person and they go out and at least, like I said, do a drive-by and things. But he doesn't think he's gonna spend $4,500, so he says he can use it for $500. We have money in there for a secretary to record his, assessment review meetings, if he has one. If we're lucky, he doesn't have any, but if we didn't budget for this, then someone would challenge their assessment.
Yeah.
So that's how you get to this Board of Assessment review, is you basically don't like his assessment. Every now and then he'll get, like, I think Target reached out a couple of years ago threatening that they might challenge the assessment there. So there definitely could be hearings at some point, but he's pretty fair to people, so we haven't really had a lot of them. Registry of Deeds, believe it or not, despite all our county taxes, Justin has to pay for his copies of deeds and stuff, so that's the $400 there. There's a law that says his annual tax commitment book has to be bound. It's not enough to just put it in a notebook, so that's $150 as he's found someone at University of Maine that applies that. $3,900 is to put together the tax maps and do the annual updates. That would cost a lot more if we had a different assessor, because Justin does a lot of the work himself. So he gets it ready and then sends files to the company that does it, that are just about ready for them to plug into. So this is the way he saves his money. Topsham's taxable valuation. So it was, is that you probably won't with this. Back in 2015, we were under $1 billion. Now we're what, 1.8. So it's increased a lot, but as you see from real estate listings, you can see why our system, our valuations increased. So Justin's goal is to try to get our assessment to match the market value. If he can get it within 90% of the market value, then we get 100% reimbursement for our homestead exemptions. Some of you may know that I have do real estate law, I have a side business. And they changed the state transfer tax form, so I have to when I record someone's deed, I have to find out the certified assessment ratio of the town and do some math. I don't know why they make the people who are recording the deeds, but anyway, there's like Brunswick right now is 69%. So what that means is Brunswick's tax homestead reimbursements are only at 69% of what they should be. So Justin's kept this certified at 100. The way he does that is every year he's tweaking our properties, and he'll look at the sales, and then he gets a report card that comes in the fall, and basically the state checks his work and they say if they agree, and they may tell him you have to fix something if they didn't, but he gets a great report card. So, and you saw the outcry that came in Brunswick last year when they were talking about trying to get caught up in their assessments, and they had a big revolt because they're so far off from reality. And Bath has been kind of doing they're more like ours, but not quite as frequently. But yeah, the great thing about Justin is he does us every year. He strives to get us at 100%, and he's adjusting everyone's properties and stuff. This is our tax rate per thousand. So as our valuation goes up, our tax rate goes down. Kind of makes sense. Last year, our tax rate was $12.50 per thousand. And this is, again, what he does each year, adjusting the tax rates. Back on our last full field evaluation was back in April 2007. And at the time, it cost $339,000. We've been putting $25,000 per year aside to help pay for our time we next need one. I mean, at some point, even though we have Justin, we're going to need another assessment because you'll find this hard to believe, but not everyone reports all the improvements to the house they probably should. So there's people that may have done projects that have increased their value, maybe significantly, but we don't know about it. So the best way to keep the property, things fair, everyone in town, so they're paying their fair share, is to periodically have someone physically go visit every property and do evaluation. So that's why at some point he's thinking probably the next 3 or 4 years, something that we're gonna have to do a full evaluation.
Start tearing some stuff down.
She's gonna take out her gold-plated fixtures.
That's right.
Any questions on assessing?
Well, the thing is, you don't have to let an assessor in your house, correct?
We don't have to, but they are allowed to basically assume the worst from your
Correct.
perspective. Yeah, All right, Linda, you're on.
Anybody not home.
Hello, well, as far as personnel for the 19.
19.
So as far as personnel for our cabinet, it's myself and, Amanda King looking to the deputy, deputy clerk. And then, we have 30 plus, election workers and volunteers, probably a total of about 45, altogether. Few highlights from the past year, as we all know, we had a pretty busy election season. Feels like it was back-to-back elections. Normally it takes us, we usually begin starting elections 2 months before an election. But for the presidential, we started in June, July. Very busy, season, a lot of training. We've had to train, some key people to assist with, absentee balloting and early voting. So we're pretty busy, but I have to say that we successfully administered a pretty good election, the biggest one this town has ever had, and we did it without any problems, so I'm pretty happy with that. And it took a lot of people to do it, and a lot of town employees that helped pitch in, so it was good. Next. This slide just shows a little bit about the trend in absentee balloting. During 2020, that was during COVID, that was the highest level, but then since then, 24, this last presidential was pretty large as well. I expect that's going to continue because people do like the ease and the convenience of early voting. And there's a new law that was passed that went into effect December of this year that anybody that would like an absentee ballot from here on in can put in a written request and you'll be given a ballot automatically for every election going forward. And the only way that stops is if you put in another request to stop. So I think it's going to be kind of costly and it's going to take a little while for the state to get things squared away, but that's how absentee voting is going.
That's crazy.
Expenditures, pretty much everything has, with the exception of document management has gone down or stayed the same. Payroll for part-time has gone down some because obviously we're not going to have that many elections. Advertising costs, I believe that one stayed the same. Professional services, that has gone down because obviously we're not going to have as many memory sticks to program. We don't have as many elections. Document management is the one that went up. I raised that $200 only because I'm expecting costs are going to go up with everything. Voting machine rentals, that stayed the same. That has been the same for many years. The state has not increased that yet, so that's good. Supplies, that has stayed the same. Actually, maybe decrease that some because we're in good shape right now. And printing, that's decreased a little bit too, just because we're not going to have as many ballots across the border.
Kimberly, are the advertising, are you doing any advertising on like on social media or Facebook or, you know, anything like that?
No, and this advertising is basically, promote, you know, for the elections, nomination papers, that type of
Town meeting.
town meeting warrant. Oh, yes, and the town meeting warrant was mentioned in the crier, so that's the cost of that as well.
And this has helped with advertising for nomination papers.
Yeah, the sign is gonna
Yeah.
help, yeah. And like Mark was saying, because, you know, a lot of stuff is in the crier, so that, you know, John can have information. Oh, any questions on elections? Going on to general business. Most people know, but in case somebody doesn't hear, the towns are required by the state to administer a general assistance program. Each town has to have one. It's basically a safety net for people that don't have enough money to pay for their immediate needs, and it's a 30-day program. Historically, we've had a pretty minimal program because we don't have a lot of apartments, so we don't have a lot of people moving in and out of town. nothing has changed on that. Everything I've allowed, I've kept the numbers all the same. It's pretty self-explanatory there. We continue to receive, donations for the heating assistance fund. And I issued, I think it was 7 families this year who received assistance with heat. We continue to get money, through donated funds for the general assistance, and that's for people that, if they don't qualify for general assistance, and we can still, then they still fall between the cracks, we can still help them out.
So, excuse me, so the donations, do they amount to?
We have about $8,000 in, general assistance funds, and we have 11,000 in our emergency heating assistance fund.
No, it just doesn't seem like you can do much with that amount of money, right?
Well, this year so far, I've only spent $2,500 in the heating fund, so there's a lot of resources, in the community, not just Topsham, but all over, that people can access for assistance.
Is it well advertised though? I mean, are people aware that
Yeah,
this
it's
is?
on my general assistance webpage, yeah.
Yeah.
And if somebody
If
wants to,
if I were to donate $50,000, you wouldn't need it?
I would never refuse it, but. Yeah.
I heard it, you donated
You guys have to approve the donation.
Any questions?
You don't have the agenda. You have it?
Yeah.
The moment everyone's been waiting for.
I'm Eddie Garrett, solid waste director. It's all just facility, we have myself, so you got 2 full-time, operators, Trent and Colton, and 2 part-time attendants, Andrea Hawkins and her daughter actually now working for us. And 2 part-time assistants, and those fill in whenever, the full-timers are, particularly on Saturdays, but other days. Recently, we were looking for, we had a gentleman that was out on an injury, and they worked out real well. They were able to take over take care of the shack for us, so that, my other person and myself could manage the operations without any difficulties. With equipment is still the same, we haven't changed anything, we've got the loader and the pickup truck with a plow and a sander, although the sander's giving me trouble right now, so I've gotta have that looked at. It's an old sander on an old truck, but we'll make it work. Downstroke baler, you can see it's an old baler, but it still works great. Trash compactors, everything we're at right now, we're going on 32 years old, the transfer station, so we're starting to replace cans and packer boxes. Last year we had some money in there for that. We're right now we're in the process of going for approval for 2 open top 30-yard containers and 2 50-yard closed top containers for our trash, which is going to help us in the with our new contract with Maine. We probably won't have the availability of having a quick changeover, so we'll have to change them ourselves or have that extra for them to keep on hand, come and change out. We usually do the new transportation company, so it's going to be some bugs flying now, but I don't think that's going to be any issues at all. The recycling, as Mark had commented on, we're going to a new contract, and it's with Maine, and they accept all plastics, number 1 through 7. So currently, where I tell you this can't go, that can't go, we'll be able to change that in July. We'll still be looking at it real close to make sure that there's no strings, ropes, plastic bags, and other things that aren't allowed. And as Mark said, that's the reason we hopefully are getting a decent price for our materials is the fact that we do a good job of keeping it clean. So unlike the curbside recycling, which is really quite, there's a lot of stuff in there. As Mark said, when we went to these facilities, the first conveyor belt that all this material goes onto, there's a number of people pulling all that stuff out that I do at our transfer station. And there's a lot of stuff that gets by that really shouldn't be in there. So us doing that is helping us with that. I think that's gonna make a big difference with them. They're gonna take more of our materials. Hopefully the price, will be, packaging program that Mark referenced, the consumer, the manufacturers will be helping with the offset of some of the recycling prices. So this will be shared with us through this same company. And hopefully that will be reflected with our pricing on that. Highlights, we've been on the tokens bags for so long, we've finally, now our biggest revenues are the returnable bottles and scrap metals. The tokens, we still will accept them and, we still give them out as change on occasions, but right now we're just working on, getting a slot in my, card slot menu so that we can start selling those tokens that we still have, because we still have them on hand. And, you know, we is about 9,000, 10,000 tokens, so it is still worth what we paid for them. So if they come in, I still accept them. So it'd be good to just keep reusing them, so rather than throwing them away. We continue to separate all our metals, our precious metals, the wire, lead acid batteries, because those markets are always decent. And if we left it in our metal pile, we'd be getting $160 a ton for it. As it is, we get a lot more for it in our recycling, and that's why some of our recycling revenues are up right now. Because we wait for the right times on our copper, aluminum, and brass, we'll get the best prices for it. We continue to recycle batteries, which is a good price for us as well. Returnables, we're probably bringing in a little over $600 a month in returnables. So keep drinking. We love the fact that people don't understand they're paying $1.50 to $2 for a deposit on a Smiling Hill Farm bottle. But we'll take them, you know, problem.
They want it back.
Yes,
Oh,
they
yeah.
do.
Yeah, we still continue to separate our OCC, which is our old corrugated cardboard. With the new contract, they've allowed us to continue to do that, which will help us because we market that off and that helps offset the cost of recycling as well, at the zero store as well. Plus, it also, we found that when we were doing COVID and everything was getting packed in our boxes, we were filling recycling in really fast just with cardboard. So if I get paid for it, it's a much better job. Still with the paint and light bulb recycling programs saved us a lot of money right now. We don't pay anything for that paint. Light bulbs, we were paying about $300 every couple of months to get rid of the light bulbs, would cost us nothing now. There's a lot of stewardship programs out there that when you're buying items, that fluorescent bulbs and that, you don't realize you're paying a little extra for them to be recycled. Paint is the same way. We pay a little extra for recycle, but it's so much nicer for us as handlers and you as residents to be able to get rid of these items very easily. And anytime I can get something started like that, we try to do that. New this year, we created a pollinator garden on the landfill caps. This is a project that was taken on by one of the Bowdoin College interns who while we were doing our intern day trips, if you will, to the different facilities, she found out that we had a PFAS issue with our landfill caps now. We can no longer pay them for feed. We have to do something different with them, whether it be going to just stick weeds or whatever. She did a little bit of homework and she was really excited about it and came up with the pollinator garden. Through the planning office, Josh, well, we've all done a real good job. Us three went out and stowed about $6,000 worth of wild seeds on top of the caps. We moved a couple of trails around the caps, which would be walking trails, and then we worked on beyond those trails and we threw the seeds along that. The idea is that this cap that we can no longer do anything with, we can create into a pollinator garden for butterflies and encourage some of those other things, plus also give you someplace that you can come out and just kind of walk and sort of see the flowers and the birds and everything else. I mean, it's, rather than just having to go waste, we might as well do something with it. And at this point, it cost us nothing other than, it takes me a few minutes just to mow it, no big deal. I'm encouraged to see what that's going to look like in the spring. I think it'll be kind of neat. We're really doing a lot of things out there at the transfer station, which
gotta get away from trash, but recreationally, we've got a nice spot out there. I think anytime that we can improve on that for the residents, it's pretty good. Right now, it gets used a lot between the trails, the fishing ponds, and I hope this walking area there as well. It's a good deal for the county. You might see some of these numbers have gone down like landfill uses because a lot of that is the contractors. They're not really real busy, so there's not a lot of revenues coming on that. The bags and coupons still maintain about the same. And like I said, the revenues from the recycling, is really doing pretty well as far as that goes. So far this year, we're, I think, ahead of our expected revenues, so we're doing really well there. Let's see, expenditures, leasing line, increase in leasing was last year, we added the bulldozer in this, we leased that so we can work on the inner landfill as well as the property that we purchased behind the transfer station, so I budgeted enough money so we can run the building for another week, so we can finish the contouring of those areas and bring them back to natural. Our compactors and containers again require maintenance over more frequently because they are getting old. So far, our transfer station compactors are doing pretty well. We had them inspected this summer and they're holding up. They are 30 years old, so somewhere along the line, we're gonna have to think about that particular steel doors and changing those around, bringing them to standards which are changed now. Again, we're replacing the 4 tractor trailers that we use for storage because those are getting worn out and beat up. And shy of building a storage facility that to house it all is cheaper just for $3,000, $4,000 a trailer. We can make those last a long time. Also budgeted to remove a large amount of items, including I got a $1,000 gas tank that came from the old highway garage that was in our old inert landfill area. Had to be pulled out and it needs to be decontaminated so that I can recycle it, send it off, but it's gonna be done the proper way to get all the fuel and sludge out of it. And do it safely. I think that's about it. Any questions? We do the old trailers and stuff. We're gonna, actually, I mean, Grimmels is gonna come and take them away. If they're roadworthy still enough to get to his facility, he'll come and haul them off for us and just for taking them away, we're gonna give them those old trailers because they're not much worth, because otherwise we'd have to pay big dollars for the tires to be removed and disposed of. They can take it and do their share if we find it's not worth anything else, so. The cans are roll-off containers. We've got 2 that are in really bad shape that we're gonna be replacing right off. And then those 2 that we'll hold on to them for a while. We may be able to find a deal where I can get them refurbished fairly cheap. Right now they're about 10,000 a piece for a can, so it's worth putting two grand into if we have to fix them, later on. But these 2 are the worst shape ones. They're about ready to fall off the wall.
Explain what a can is.
I can, when I say a can, I'm referring to if you come to the transfer station where we pack all our metal, it's those big roll-off containers. They're 30-yard containers with an open top, and the truck grabs it, pulls it up onto it, and hauls it off, dumps it, and brings it back. So they take a lot of beating over the years. And the trash cans, the same deal. They take a beating. And right now, my 2 trash containers have some leakage, so we don't want leaks coming out of the trash. We're containing the cans, so the new ones will go in place there. The older trash containers that leak will move over to the recycling because they're better weather. Of course, our recycling cans are getting pretty funky, so that's why we're replacing those and setting them around.
For your other big equipment that will be needing to be replaced in a few years, does the town know, I mean, is that anticipated budgeting and what kind of, how much do
We
those
got a plan
cost?
on what we bought, like a piece of equipment, but how many years are we gonna get out? So that's what we're planning to have on. A bucket lorry, for instance, we just got that a couple years ago. That should last us 20 years, using 15 to 20 years. Easy enough. I use it every day. It takes an abuse every day, but they hold up pretty well. Forklift we've had for quite a few years, and that doesn't show any real signs that need to be replaced. So I'm working for them to keep getting the hand-me-down trucks, so I don't have to work. So yeah, otherwise we're doing pretty good with the equipment and our capital programs. We're thinking way ahead, but right now you might not see anything on that because I have no capital plans way ahead right now.
Anything else?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Are we still, not talking about commercial, but people come in with huge loads? Remember, we had an issue a couple of years ago where they come in and throw a couple bags, we call it good, and then we tighten up on that. Do we still have that? You still on top of that?
Oh, yeah, no, see, whereas originally, when we first built the place, everything had to be in a Topsham bag or a coupon paper. Over the years, we've kind of changed things around, we've added the tokens, we've added this, and then with, there's another interns from the college worked on us to get the pads so we can do credit cards. So now we've got the card. And when we did that, we also adjusted all our prices so that now if you're using a bag that's not a Topsham bag, we're charging accordingly. Because that bag is either one, much bigger than ours, or two, meant to hold a lot more, you know. And some people tell me that our bags aren't any good, but I can see an older woman coming in and she's just a string in, and that bag holds everything she's packed in there. You ain't gonna tell me my bag.
I could put 100 pounds of crap in that bag. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I know for a fact too.
So I mean, so when people use contractor bags, they're meant to hold 60, pounds of
Right.
weight. So and our bags are price is based on 30.
Yeah, so all I just remember was a thing, it's like, they just come in with black
We
bags.
adjusted by the yard as well, so we charge them by the
Yeah,
yard.
and they give us, you'd say, 6 bags, and it was, 6 bags was not covering the cost.
Right,
our costs.
exactly. So we had to tighten that. Same thing with barrels, so they want to dump a barrel. Yeah, well, that barrel probably was 150 pounds. It'll hold it.
Yeah.
But if they're straining to get that barrel, then, yeah, you're gonna pay $4 to $6 for that barrel instead. So we are watching that. The only thing that can make it better is, and this is something we thought of for the future possibly, would be putting the scales and taking those in terms of the scale. You get a better price, you get the exact price of what it costs you to figure that out. So those are some of our future plans that we've talked about, what we'll be able to do eventually. Scale system's not real expensive. And then after that's just a matter of reconfiguring where our metal cans and demo cans go. We can get to better money for both. Yes.
I noticed that not only your department, but other departments that have a line for gasoline and diesel. Gasoline especially with the threat of the tariffs that's gonna play havoc with the pricing. Do you feel that you're adequately covered that cost should that go in?
I'm fine. I think we'll be fine with our fuels. Yeah.
One of the things that we'll do is we will reevaluate. When it gets closer to the time to pass it, we'll reevaluate what would be in charge for gas and diesel, and make sure that we have enough right now, where I think it was $3.19 for gas and $3.49 for diesel. But, no, it's something that we will definitely look at.
So this line item,
And-
those might change a bit
Yeah.
to finalize.
It may not, but if you look at what I've already spent so far, I mean, I've not spent that much, so.
So
We
you
also,
haven't been working
we also only have one truck now, we had 2 before, and 1 ton crapped out finally, so that hand-me-down is now down for sales.
So the drop in gasoline usage is not because you're not doing your job?
No, just because I'm not traveling enough.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
While Sky gets ready, as you've heard a couple times tonight, we have insurance for going to college. And like a couple years ago, we had 4. And we tell the college, we take as many as we want. And we almost treat it like a contract. We set them up for a conference room. And they have tours to the departments for the first couple of weeks. And then we do tours to other places. So like some of the 4 of the people in jail. So we'll get a jail tour. And our entire staff, where we devoted a lot of time to them. And at the end of the summer, they picked the Bowden Cup for the department where they think is the best. We're happy. And Dennis won it 1 year, and then the next year Ed got it. Scott's department got it last year.
They brought him lunch, don't let him go.
Yeah.
Usually we'll have 6 to 8 students apply or something. I got an email last Friday from the Bowden director of the program. you will not believe this, but I've got 18 students that want to apply for the Topsham program.
Take them.
And
Come on.
the college pays their some of the wages, we don't have to pay anything, it's like 5,000 per student. And so she said, there's so many have applied, she's gonna give us 3 this year, so we haven't picked our 3 yet. But we'll get 3, and then Sky's got 1 from another program, so we'll have 4 voting interns.
Nice.
That just shows you how. We do learn a lot, and I gotta say that this intern program, if I can just throw that, I went to one of their presentations when they. I did the pollinator garden, that was her presentation. And I didn't realize how big of a program that was at the Golden Cause. There was, 60 kids or more. And they all did some programs for other communities throughout the state. And some of them are pretty impressive what these kids do. So, I mean, it's great to have them working for us and not stopping them as well. I mean, it's a great program. I'll give credit to Mark. He's one of those alumnists. I did have to give up my cup.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
And now for the 2024 Boat Cup winner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sky Salami. This is my first budget season, so it's fun to be here with you guys.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No, I'm actually, it's very interesting stuff. So I'm the Director of Planning, Development, and Codes. There we go. The Planning and Codes Department, our chief concern is maintaining compliance with local and state ordinances and requirements. The planning department works with the site plan and the subdivision ordinance, and the code enforcement officer works with the zoning ordinance, as well as state building code and other applicable things. So that's the big thing that we do. We also work with citizens to create and maintain long-range planning documents. My apologies. And so that process happens usually with committees. We are the staff liaison to multiple citizen committees, including planning board, historic district commission, the comprehensive plan implementation committee. It also includes a couple other ones. I didn't put them on there for the sake of getting everything on the slide. The code enforcement division is responsible for issuing, and I'm sorry, this is a mistake. He does issue residential building permits, but he also does commercial ones as well, all building permits, electrical, plumbing. We also have a solar opaque permit that he does. And we also, as it has been alluded to this evening, we assist other town departments when projects come up, and committees. We've assisted the bike ped committee this year with a grant application. We've assisted on the Pleasant Point project, as well as Bedford Road. So we do stuff with other departments as well. Our staff is me. I've already introduced myself. Tom Lister is the code enforcement officer. We are incredibly lucky to have him. He's a great code enforcement officer. I would be very, very sad if he were to ever leave us. So I'm very glad we did not let him go to Lisbon. Our planner is Josh Franklin, and he started the end of June last year. He's been great. And our planning and code secretary is Irene Gabriel, who has been here for a long, long time, and she has so much institutional knowledge. Committee highlights. Planning board is, I don't want to use the word most important, but in some ways they're the biggest committee that we've worked with. They've had 10 meetings so far. They've reviewed plans for a new dental building along Village Drive. That's what it could look like. Though it's missing trees, they're usually very light on trees and those types of images, so we'll find out more. They've also looked at potential apartments at Fort Union Park, as well as amendment to Six Rivers Youth Sports to add a hockey rink. 100 Park Drive residences is trying to get done. That's apartments by the Goodwill building. And we've worked on later phases of the Eagle River and Mount Wood subdivisions. They've held 3 workshops. They finished their first round of code cleanup workshops as part of the recode effort in April of 2024 when our previous planning director left us. We finished that, and then the summer was spent on citizen comment for that, so they're a little lower on workshops this year. They will begin a second round of doing these workshops of the whole recode hopefully before the end of this fiscal year. The comments have gone to the consultants for a new draft. There are also a few small zoning amendments that are being prepared for a town meeting this spring, but we're probably a little light this year compared to some other years. Historic District Commission, we also liaised with them. They've had one meeting this year for window replacement, which was actually really exciting for the building that was a little bit blighted, and they had some new people that bought it that really wanted to do the right thing by it. They actually talked to us and they actually came to the Historic District, which was something that had not been done with that property before, so that was good to see. We helped them do it in an economical but appropriate way for the district. Zoning Board of Appeals has not held any meetings this year. We haven't had any issues. And then some of our committees that are maybe working a little bit more on this long range planning that I discussed, the comprehensive plan implementation committee is still working on the recode project. They have had 23 meetings this fiscal year thus far. This includes 2 stakeholder workshops, 9 coffee with recode meetings, and well, I think that. No, there isn't. So as I said before, we had a new draft of the recode created last spring, April, May. Since then, we have been working diligently to get citizen input on that draft. We have been taking that citizen input. We have been getting staff comments. All of that was pulled together, and I actually today emailed all of those comments to our consultants. We're hoping to get another draft by the end of April and then move on to planning board workshops. CPIC has been working on responding to those citizen comments in the center zones, which is the area that they have been responsible for. And they did have a consultant workshop recently where they did make a few changes in response to concerns by citizens and developers and saying, okay, well, how do we meet in the middle? So we are really working on that, and we want to make this a code that is for everyone in Topsham. The Conservation Commission, they are a standing commission. They've had 7 meetings thus far this year. They monitor town easements. They manage a tree at the library that is in memorial of Christine Cole. And they have been working with the, as Mark mentioned earlier, the committee partnership project policy. I named it and now I can't remember it exactly. To propose an update to the 2010 National Areas Plan. That has not come to the planning board or the planning department for full review or to the select board. I know it's working. We also liaise with the energy committee. They have been working on a climate action plan update that is in the final stages. It is actually up on the website, available for public comment right now. So if any of you feel the desire to read that and make public comment, it is available on the website. They are hoping that it will go onto the warrant for May 2025. Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask you in terms of the energy committee, how did that solar farm get placed over behind the green entrance, and who's going to benefit from that?
That farm was not related to the energy committee. It is allowed there for our zoning code, and they have a site plan approval from the summer of 2023 that was then revised this summer and construction.
Okay, so now who benefits from it?
I'm not sure. I don't think that's a question we need to ask when we get those.
Does anybody know?
The Highlands owner. Somehow, how the financing of it, we don't know. There's all kinds of tax credits.
Who benefits from that? Are we, as citizens of Topsham, going to benefit from that solar farm there or not?
I know.
Why is it there?
It's in a lot of use.
Why couldn't we have a Costco there? I'm just curious, seriously, Mark, that's there. It was just put in with nobody's approval or nothing.
It was
The private landowner who's the owner of the Highlands.
Yeah, I know who it is.
He is a use he can do for his land. He applied for it. And got it.
I'll just note that it has approval from the planning board. If they held a meeting and didn't really have anyone come to that meeting.
I don't think it was ever announced. Did you hear anything about that? Jeff?
Well, I mean, I knew it was planned and coming.
Oh, I didn't. Just curious.
On the recode, is there any anticipation when it be done? Which I'll ask a 2-part. If it's done before next town meeting time and before, we will not go to a special town meeting, right?
You mean the 2026 town meeting? Right now the plan is that it would go to the special town meeting.
I think that's terrible. Because special town meetings, nobody goes. And it's a big thing. Recode is a big thing. So that's why I brought it up.
Nobody goes to regular town meeting.
No, but at least more than 10. You know,
Does everybody know the two?
That's debatable.
huh?
Debatable.
Scott, I have I have two questions. What is the natural areas plan? What is that? I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's a plan from, it's a plan from 2010.
Yeah.
It kind of, it looks at the whole town and it looks at the whole town and it kind of, it tries to figure out areas where the preserving, it might be more important. So it has, something that came out of that actually is a map that assigns some value, either high, medium or high. And that map is actually used when we get applications for solar farm. And if they're in those medium or high areas, they have to pay a mitigation fee.
So then I have a second one. So I live in the Bay Park area.
Mhm.
We were told that there was gonna be a solar farm at the end. And it feels like, then we've heard some rumblings that that's not happening. Is that happening? Do you know?
I have heard nothing officially about that project. Since I've heard nothing officially, their site plan approval will have lapsed, so it'll be a completely new
Okay.
approval at this point. Unofficially, I've heard the same rumblings.
Yeah. And I always get asked, because
They don't have, if anyone's that, they don't have an approved site plan.
okay, thank you.
Has the dental office passed?
Yes.
If I go there,
So,
so they
yes,
just,
both of their plans passed. We worked with them a lot to get to a place where they're in compliance with the code and
Good.
they get permits for both the parking expansion and the new one on the village drive.
Great.
The picture was up.
great, that's why.
They need more space than just there.
Thank you.
She was asking about Topsham Dental Arts on Forsyth Road. We worked with them to a parking expansion.
So they're leaving Forsyth or they're opening another building?
They're opening another building and they intend to keep Forsyth as a dental office. Any other questions on committees? All right. So this is just a general overview of permits issued last fiscal year and so far this fiscal year. You can see that, well, you can't see a whole lot from this. Things are trending down because interest rates are really high right now. People are not spending as much on new builds. They're not spending as much on luxuries like pools. The planning and codes department, as Mark mentioned, is just seeing decrease because interest rates are high. That affects both residential, single family subdivisions, people wanting to make changes to their homes. And like multifamily larger construction projects. We have several multifamily projects that have mentioned that high interest rates are a real barrier to their construction. So that is just impacting us right now. And passport application processing continues on. Our passport agents went out on medical leave for about a month and a half. No, 2 months this fiscal year, so those numbers will be lower this year.
I have a question.
Yes.
On passports. Why is it down so low? Is it down because it's only done certain hours or people doing more online or, that's quite a drop.
Yes, well, so this is only like, this is FY 25 permits through like 2 weeks ago, so it's low for that reason. But she was also out on medical leave for 2 months.
When there's nobody else that does it, just her.
We have one passport agent.
Question two, Sarah. On the building permits. Since that doesn't include just new buildings, that includes garages and sheds and everything. I'm curious, just because I've also been asked, I don't know. Do you know how many of those permits are new construction? I'm just on a side, I'm curious how many houses have been built in the past year or two, maybe 5 years in Topsham.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. I could check with Paul on that. He probably keeps very good tracks of things. Or maybe Justin. I always start with Tom. Tom's very knowledgeable. Both of them are. We're very lucky to have both of them. I utilize those resources a lot.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'll guess.
No, that's all right. I'm just more out of curiosity.
Understood.
I have a question. I don't know if it's to you or not, Sky, but because of the housing crisis and the Does Thompson have what size is the buildable lot? I guess
That's different in every zone.
it is in every town? Is it?
Zone,
Oh, in
zone,
every zone, okay,
So we
gotcha.
have different zones in town,
Okay,
so right
gotcha.
now, we're Village Center, if you live out on, blanking on road names. On the outskirts, you're in the rural zone most likely. In the rural zone, you have to have a minimum of 1.5 acres. In the BC, this Village Center. Oh, I can't remember, that one was probably close to 10 to 20,000 square feet.
Has there been any consideration for us to tweak any of those because of the housing shortage? I know, and the reason I'm asking is my kids, some of my kids live in Durham, and that was a big discussion that they just had, so that a lot, the building laws that they had, they were able to work on a little bit so that they could have smaller houses built on the land and whatever. So I was just kind of curious if that's been any kind of conversation here.
It's a huge part of recode.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big part of recode is lowering, is increasing density.
Okay.
Or actually our requirements, some of the recode is governed by form requirements in the center zone. It's not all of town. That's
Right.
kind of a pilot to the whole. But we did also increase density in this zone at last town meeting, to allow, many more units. Because multifamily housing is a really great way to get, more people in the center of town at, more affordable. I mean, I know that when you see apartments for rent in places, you don't think that those are affordable, but they're more affordable than, a $600,000 single family home, which is what we're usually seeing in single family subdivisions. So we're really trying to encourage and help developers build multifamily. Recode is really working on that, but we've also done zoning amendments along the way as we can.
And the 250 apartment units on the other side of 295, right on 196.
No.
Not yet.
I thought there was a house plan for that.
There's been people approached us of possibilities, but it's unlikely to happen until there's water and sewer over there.
Yeah, to add, we are trying to increase density in a part of town that can handle that water and sewer. In the rural areas, there's things you can do, and there are things that I would love to explore doing more in the rural areas. In Topsham, the class Mark mentioned, I learned a bit about what Vermont is doing, the things I'd love to do when I have time. But not having water and sewer connections really limits that, when you have to have, update systems.
Right.
Yeah, it gets hard.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions?
I have a technical question, sorry. Why would you put in water and sewage before you get approval to do a 250? What would you?
Why would we?
Yeah, how does that work?
So what's gonna happen is there's a draft now that gets shared with the Topsham Development for comment and things. There'll be a final report that Pierce is gonna come present at a joint workshop of the select board of Topsham Development, probably like late April. And then after that, it's up to the select board to determine what will happen with it. Most likely, I don't see, unless there's a significant development that says, here's how we'd like to fund it. I don't see the town, especially because the water district and the sewer district are separate entities. They're not town entities.
Right.
So maybe it might be a case for a TIF, so if there's enough to benefit the town, maybe it's worthwhile. But I don't see right now the numbers in millions, multiple millions to do this, and you've been seeing our budget. I don't see the town just undertaking that without some developer paying for it.
And this is just a slide that goes over what our share of central services is, professional development. About 1/3 of that is memberships to professional associations. I'm a member of the American Planning Association. Tom is a member of the Maine, Maine Building Inspectors, such and such association. He's very involved in them, which is lucky for us. And my planner is also a member of the American Planning Association. We do also go to conferences and trainings where we try to bring those ideas back to Topsham and come up with things that will creative solutions to these issues that everyone is aware of. So those are very beneficial for us. There's a item in here for the code zone update because, if pre-code passes, it is visually a bit different looking and it utilizes form-based code, in part of it. And that is just a bit more expensive to set up on the website. After it's set up, it's going to be so much better for people to navigate. There won't just be strange attachments that tell you where your setbacks are. It'll actually be a little bit clearer. So I think it'll be a really good improvement for the town. So that's why we have that budgeted in there. And I think at least some of that is potentially a rollover because we thought we were going to do that this year, but we didn't. But I will speak to that. I don't. That's this table over here. All right. Any other questions?
Just a curiosity, is anything ever gonna happen with the old Bright Pierce lot across the street?
We'd love for it to happen over there. That would be a great location, for something to occur.
With that part of the recode, right?
What?
That's part of the recode stuff coming out.
I mean, recode would make it easier. We also passed a zoning amendment last spring that allows greater density in this area. I think there are things that could be done over there. The developer who owns that parcel has other projects he's working on, so that could be part of it as well. But it's prime location. For the most part, hasn't been done.
It had a plan they've shown us that has 3 buildings, and part of the last year's zoning code things at town meeting was to reduce maximum setbacks, because under our prior zoning code, you had to have the building certain distance from the street, and the way they set up the 3, one of them was getting too far back. I think that one too has been what we're told by the developers been the victim of interest rates. Right now, you can't get the numbers to work based on the interest rate. There's definitely interest in doing that. What he's talked about is either parking on the underneath, like the back 2 buildings with the 2 or 3 stories above that, in front of maybe some type of a restaurant or retail residents.
Yeah, I'll just add, the maximum setback still applies to 1 building, but the other ones don't have to. So we're keeping all the good and giving more flexibility to developers, which is my favorite thing to do. Lovely. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Staying with
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. My brain was working. So I was a registrar at a community college, but often when we had students that went out into the community, they would give them projects about kind of just to get their ideas about maybe what would work well. And it gave kind of an outsider's view, but also just some real new blood ideas. And so I'm just curious if we might want to do that with our students that are coming in to see if they have some ideas or, just fresh ideas about, it could be revenue seeking, it could be economic development. And I would just love to hear maybe posing the question of, and maybe that be a project for them over the summer about maybe just some of their ideas, because we came up with some really great projects at the college because of some of their ideas that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. So that's just a FYI kind of a thing, I guess.
No, I love that. I've got to keep my Bowden cup mantle. Well, they're all gone, so I can say that. I've got to keep my Bowden cup mantle, so I'll take all of the ideas.
What we do is during the first 2 weeks of we call the department tours, we have a list that Jeff and I come up with of maybe 10 possible projects. And then we tell them, as you go to your departments and you talk to them, if you've got other ideas for projects, that's fine too. At the end of the 2-week period, they pick their projects. Maybe half pick things that we've come up with, and we always pick things that are useful for the town and not filing or something.
Yeah.
But then about half the projects are things students came up with.
Awesome.
Like a couple of years ago, we had one that did the brochure for the community paramedic program, and that was just during department tour, she hit it off with a community paramedic and said she wanted to help all.
Well, it's great because it's new insight that you're not going to get in, and being in college, it's often a little fresher, maybe a different idea than we would come up with ourselves because of age or whatever. So yeah, I love it.
And that polling department stuff was not on our radar at all. Just during her tour, she heard about how it's got PFAS on the top, and she just came up with that.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that was a very cool thing to watch. It was not on my radar at all. I didn't think about it. And Izzy was the intern at the planning department last summer. But they had a passion project thing that they were, part of their thing, and that became their passion project. And it was so successful, and we would never have thought of that, even though it was simple. We found grant funding. Yeah. And I think it's a slam dunk for the town. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Concerned about the insects getting any of this? I mean, if it's not good for people and animals,
Yeah, that definitely came up because they looked at a couple other ideas as well, and we put them out because that was an issue. Gosh, I'm sorry, this wasn't my project, so I'm not fully versed in it, but I know we talked about that issue, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't for the insects, that it was something about all the different processes that you take to get to them, it kind of, like, maybe it doesn't go into the flower a lot or something like that, but
But they don't have a system.
yeah, I don't know exactly, but I do know that there was, the pollinator thing was not their first idea. And, I have a minor in sustainable food production a while ago, and we talked about gardening ideas and things like that, and, that was oftentimes the question, is it gonna hurt anything? You know, can't do that, and I think that the flowers potentially don't take it up. It's to that level, it could be harmful, but,
Okay, so I'm gonna pick this idea of all these dead bugs in the garden.
yes, I don't think that's going to happen.
Actually, interesting, Ed was at a waste conference or whatever, and they found that tomatoes and like pumpkins and these things, they don't take up the PFAS. So the tomato stem has plenty of PFAS, but the actual fruit doesn't. So there's a number of vegetables that may be okay to
Still would
grow
need
in
it.
PFAS contaminated soil.
Right, then they actually pull it out of the soil.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
It's been
Sky.
a joy.
So that's it for tonight.
Okay.
The rest of what would have been tonight will be tomorrow. We still have 2 more boxes of sandwiches, so there will be food tomorrow night, probably not Wednesday though, so make sure you eat Wednesday.